Yeah, we got a lot to get into on this Thursday edition of The Zone. Jason Anderson with you, Jack Johnson, Dylan Michaels. We head up until 2 o'clock. We got a lot of college basketball on the docket. A lot of things to take away from last night's action at T-Mobile with the two local teams. Kansas finding a way to escape with a win against UCF, and Kansas State not able to build off the win on Tuesday night to perform last night. It looked early on, K-State came out with the energy and a couple quick buckets. You're like, all right, well, here you go. This team, playing like maybe they did in that 6-game winning streak where uber confident. And, by the way, Scott Drew, great timeout. Immediately got a quick timeout. Like, I'm not letting this thing fester and go even more. I'm not going to be down 10-0 before my guys get their head out of their you-know-what. Quick timeout. They came out, and then Baylor essentially took care of business the rest of the way. We will talk K-State and even more from a bigger picture standpoint rather than even just the game, because the comments from Coleman Hawkins were difficult to watch and listen to because of the emotions that are there. And it's incredibly raw, the emotions that are there of somebody dealing with a lot of different things. The pressure is pulling you in different directions, and being in the spotlight and being in a new place with added pressure. And, he's not 30, 35, 40 years old. He's 23, still an adult, still somebody that, is in more of a position to handle those things than, say, a 17 or 18-year-old. So I definitely want to talk about those things and Todd Lebo's conversation with Jerome Tang after the game was over. And we'll talk some KU basketball as well. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us to be a part of the show. 913-912-4810 to weigh in on things you saw last night. KU and Missouri in action tonight. Mizzou at 6 o'clock taking on Mississippi State. And KU in action against Arizona at 8:30. And that's right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Our coverage starting at 7 o'clock tonight after a little bonus hour as well. Let's get into the conversation here. I want to start with KU because we'll have a little bit more time to talk about K-State in the next segment and more of an extended conversation. Just wondering if there's a lesson to be taken away from last night. And we'll get into those things and your text as well. But KU wins the game. Let's hear from Bill Self right out of the gates. This was last night in his conversation with Greg Gurley. Now, I have heard it through the grapevine that Greg Gurley was not the person that told Bill Self he's got a good feeling about A.J. Storr. As Bill Self said, somebody told me that they had a good feeling about A.J. Storr today. And that was not Greg Gurley. So typically he's the guy that's like, hey, man, Hunter, I need you to go out there and have, 30 and 13. He is not the Pied Piper. He is not the Nostradamus, the guy that can read the crystal ball. It was not him. And I'm not really sure who would randomly say, I got a good feeling about A.J. Storr. I think if you say it enough times throughout the season, you'll be right.
It was actually me. I kind of passed him walking in, and I just was like, listen, guys.
Wait a minute. That guy
we've been talking about it all week.
He's got an aura about him.
I know nothing, but you should play A.J. Storr. It's going to happen.
I don't know, man. Look, I've you play basketball, you go to a number of shoot-arounds. I'm not at the pre-shoot-arounds where these major college athletes and NBA players get the gym to themselves 3 or 4 hours before a game. And I know that not necessarily the case at T-Mobile, but other areas to shoot around. And somebody saying, saw AJ at shoot around. I got a good feeling about him. And then AJ Storr last night saying, no, it was a really good shoot around. I shoot around all the time. It doesn't mean I'm going to go out there and play. Well, then what'd you do last night in the shoot around that you haven't been doing in other? Do that more often. Hey, scoring basketball in the hoop, net go swish. Do that more often, guy. But here's Bill Self last night after the game was over, overtime game, 98-94 winners with Greg Gurley in his assessment of the game and honest and sharp assessment / criticism of his team.
Yeah, we're happy we won. Absolutely ridiculously disappointed in how we played. But we didn't guard anybody. And, we're going to find out just how manly we are tomorrow night because we put ourselves in a situation to have to play 5 guys or 4 guys 35-plus minutes. And now with the short turnaround and playing a team that will be well rested and be hungry to beat us after Saturday. I'm not leaving out of here happy we won, but certainly leaving out of here disappointed. We didn't come ready to play. If it weren't for Zeke early, we wouldn't have had much going on. And then KJ obviously bailed us out. Garden Hall, he still gets 25, but if KJ hadn't guarded him the 25 minutes or whatever, he may have gone for 40. A lot of things we can improve on. And defensively, we've been hit and miss, but more hit, obviously, for the year. I mean, we're the 6th rated efficient defensive team in the country, but tonight we weren't.
I'll let you guys weigh in on what you saw last night, your takeaway, and then what you heard from Bill Self, because as somebody watching the game, I know from probably a Kansas standpoint, there'd be some frustration with the shots that are made and open shots. Just watching the game and enjoying basketball, I had fun watching the game. It was an enjoyable basketball game. I didn't know that it was going to be that when KU went up 13 after the back-to-back threes from, was it Coit and Storr? And it was like, all right, well, they're pulling away now. And then the great timeout from Johnny Dawkins, again right there, and then a 19-2 run by UCF. Like, all right, here we go. Now we got ourselves a game. But from your guys' standpoint watching it, what you felt throughout the game, post-game, and then hearing Bill Self ridiculously bad and how they played, even though they scored 98 points last night.
If this was a regular season game, you probably don't feel as good about it because it was UCF. They were the 14th place finisher in the Big 12, and you gave up 94 points, and it took a huge effort from A.J. Storr. It took a great second half from Hunter Dickinson. Zeke Mayo was phenomenal as well, and yet here you are in a dogfight with a team you shouldn't be in a dogfight with. However, it's not the regular season anymore. From this point on, it is just survive and advance, and with this Kansas team, as they've done all season long against UCF, they put up a lot of points. They scored 90-plus in all 3 games against the Golden Knights. But defensively, yeah, I do question how you can look as good as they did on the road at Houston and then be as poor as they were against a team that is far inferior to Houston. I'm not sure if it's the Kansas team turns up the intensity when they feel they have to, right? When they look at the team they're playing and they say, we're playing Houston. We need to have our A-plus defensive effort, and we need to be into a 55-58 game. Whereas UCF, it's more so on them. Maybe they didn't take it as seriously. Maybe they felt that after they beat them by 51 points, this team's not very good. We're going to be able to score on them at will, so they're going to miss some shots. And that's what you saw in the first game is UCF missed their first maybe 8 or 9 threes, and they almost went away from their game plan.
You did that in the first half on Tuesday night, too.
Yeah.
And then they went crazy in the second half.
And that's just their style of play. They put up a lot of three-pointers, and last night they hit 14 of them and shot over 40%. Part of that was bad defense, miscommunication. That's on Kansas, so you can't play the these guys that are shooting sub 30% are knocking them down. I believe you said it last week that Division I athletes are going to hit open shots, and they did.
And people are like, oh, Kentucky, it was for Mizzou. It's like Kentucky was hot. Like, no, there were Division I athletes. That guy's shooting 32% on the entire year. What's he shooting on open threes? I bet it ain't 32% on open threes. I bet Division I college athletes, the way that today's game is, if you've got an open three in rhythm, I'm guessing it's 50-50. I'm guessing it's 50% or better. What makes it 32% is you're coming off a screen quick, you're in transition, you're pulling up and shooting it. Late clock situation, I got to take the shot, I'm going to miss it, but that still counts as, it's why NBA players don't throw the half-court shot anymore. They dribble until the clock runs out, and then they throw it right after the buzzer. You notice that in the NBA? Because that's an 0 for 1 on a three-point attempt, and I ain't getting that thing on I'm not going to make it, so why would I even attempt it? That's 0 for 1. That's stats maybe give me a little extra cheese if you're shooting 37% as opposed to 35%. But that's how you get to that 32, 33%. You're open. odds are you're going to make that, or you should make that. You're on scholarship. Dylan, what did you feel last night as you were watching that game while it was happening, and then the takeaway, and then hearing Bill Self's assessment and his disappointment in finding a way to win that game? Not disappointment in finding a way, disappointment in how they played to ultimately win.
I mean, I kind of agree with the disappointment in the way that it happened because, like Jack was saying, it's like when you get up 13 points, you were going to put that team away, and it was probably going to be a 20-point win, a great launching pad into tonight. It's like you just kind of let your foot off the gas, and you, like I was saying about Mizzou going to Oklahoma, you learn a lesson in a win where your tournament run isn't over. You can't let your foot off the gas no matter who you're playing, or you're going to end up in overtime against UCF. You have to keep your foot on the pedal, keep your foot on their neck, keep playing defense, closing out, doing what you were doing the entire game that got you that 13-point lead. It just kind of felt like Jack said, like, oh, this team, they're going to crumble as soon as we kind of get a run going, and they didn't.
Did this game, as I'm watching it, did this game feel like an overall sort of microcosm of all the different things we've talked about at different times with different games happens in 45 minutes, where defensive lapses, late game execution, guys are scoring, AJ Store's knocking down shots. You're like, oh, where's that? DeJuan Harris, fouling out, and Hunter Dickinson struggling in the first half. And it's like, why doesn't he play better basketball? Look, size affects Hunter Dickinson every time. Look, he's struggling in the second half. Hey, there's Hunter Dickinson. That's what we've seen the last 3 or 4 weeks. KJ Adams, good God, he can't score. KJ Adams defensively, oh my God, look what he's doing, and the hustle and the energy. Zeke Mayo knocking down shots and being like, it felt like last night, so many different conversations and topics that we've had about this KU team. We can look at an individual 5-minute stretch last night and go, oh, yeah, that was that game. Oh, that last night was that game over there.
They even did the Houston at home by keep allowing UCF to just get closer and closer at the end of the game. I think that might be what's also frustrating for Bill Self. There wasn't like, all right, we're making our free throws, we're catching the ball, we're playing defense, it's just like they kept allowing, and the foul, just let him lay it up. I never get that.
AJ Store.
I don't get
you got to be smarter than that.
Fouling anyone when they're driving inside the 3-point line, down more than one possession.
They're down 4. The last thing you want to let them lay it up.
Let them go. Exactly.
The free throw, now it's a one-possession game. The only thing, the most surprising thing was when UCF came down and shot the 3 to tie it, that the broadcast didn't say, you don't need a 3 here. That's the only surprise, although we wouldn't have heard it anyway because we would have just heard the crowd noise over the incredibly silent mics from the broadcasters. Anybody else straining to hear them talk last night? It was absurd. Like, turn down the crowd mic, turn up the broadcast. It's like, I almost muted it because I'm like, I don't want to strain to hear what I can't hear what they're saying. Anyway, Jack, your thoughts?
Well, what's funny about this UCF team is that 51-point beatdown almost skewed your image of them. You saw that game and said, that's an awful basketball team. It is a Division I team, a conference team that just lost to another opponent by 50-plus points. We've seen Kansas play Washburn closer, or Emporia State in the exhibition game. And what is funny about that is, on paper, UCF is a tough matchup for Kansas because of Keyshawn Hall being 6'8" to 6'10". He's long. He can score around the rim. He can shoot it. Who for Kansas can defend that? Hunter Dickinson's too slow. KJ Adams isn't big enough or has a long enough wingspan. DeJuan Harris is too small. Rylan Griffin or AJ Store aren't good enough defenders to take him on. And that's where in the first game, he was not really a factor. Where then in Lawrence, I believe he put up 30-plus points in that game because it's not a good matchup. And looking to tonight against Arizona, as we saw on Saturday, it actually is on paper a better matchup for them. Arizona doesn't shoot or make a lot of threes. They are guard-oriented with Caleb Love, and he almost drives how that game goes. If he's putting up 25-plus, Arizona's going to win. You hold him under 20 points, he's shooting the ball 22, 23 times and can take his other guys out of the game. So getting past UCF in this first round, it's not that you need to be worried of, oh, it took overtime to beat the 14 seed. In the Big 12 tournament, it really doesn't matter what you did the night before because it's a different matchup, a different team the next night. What we will have to factor in is, as Bill Self said, they played a few guys 40 minutes and 38 minutes. They had to go into overtime where Arizona hasn't played since the game on Saturday against Kansas. Now, you could flip it and say they could be rusty to start the game. They've been rested, and KU just played an emotional game. The building, I was there last night. It was rocking. It was a really good atmosphere for an 8:30 tip-off against UCF. Tonight, it'll be even more so. That place will be packed and loud, and you could tell the players in certain stretches were feeding off that on the offensive end. Can't say for the defensive end because UCF put up 94.
Yeah, no wonder you didn't have a comment on the broadcasters and their microphones being so low, and only hearing the crowd chanting while they're trying to they're talking. Just turn up their mics and turn down the crowd mic. It seems pretty easy. I don't know who the producer, director, whatever it is. Like that's
it's on him.
It's a simple fix. Like whatever. The thing that you fear will ultimately cost them a game that now it's do or die winner. Like next week's the ultimate must-win game. Like this isn't a must-win game. If you want to continue playing in Kansas City, it's a must-win. But to continue keeping your season going is some of the decisions and the play late in the game. Because Texas Tech, it was DeJuan, and it was Hunter, and it was Zeke, and it was guys who are older that were making mistakes. And then you don't even get a shot off against Texas Tech. And then last night, you don't get a shot off because you step out of bounds. That obviously was not the play, and Bill Self said that was not the play. The plan was to get the ball to Hunter Dickinson. They guarded it a certain way, fronted him, whatever it might be. They inbound to KJ. Also, the problem is nobody was moving. Like the guards, as KJ got the ball, just watch the guards. They're just standing there. They're not sprinting over, give me the ball. I got it. Nobody was guarding KJ. So it would have been an easy Zeke Mayo to come handoff. KJ set a screen. He's open because there was nobody to help hedge. But people were just standing there. So then KJ's like, nobody's really on me guarding. All right, let me drive in. All right, now they've got me. All right, now I'm going to try to go the baseline and step out of bounds. But that's also a symptom of this team is who's the go-to guy bucket getter? Well, who was the play for? Hunter Dickinson. Who can't go and get the ball and get his own shot? Hunter Dickinson. So somebody else has to get the ball to get it to Hunter for him to then create and go and score. That's a symptom of what has been an overall struggle for this team at times. And, of course, A.J. Storr fouling when you're up 4 and the guy's driving to the hole. Diggy Coy did exactly what he's supposed to do. Like, he's guarding him, and then he backs away and let him lay it up. And A.J. Storr just slaps down on his shoulder.
Please, thank you. Go inside the three-point line.
You're down by 4. Hey, we're going to knock down free throws. You hit layups. We'll hit free throws. You hit layups. We'll hit free throws. We win the game. No big deal. The time's going to run out until you foul out on that. You also have 4 fouls. Like, those are the plays that you pull your hair out. If you're a coach, if you're a fan, because he's played Division I basketball for a long time. Like, you should be smarter than that. That even on a night when he scores, it's like there are the deficiencies there because you got wing guys who can score but not really play defense. You've got a guy who can play really good defense in KJ Adams that isn't really a scorer, a hustle guy that's going to get his points in transition and things like that. And you got a really good offensive threat in Hunter Dickinson that's most of the time a defensive liability. And DeJuan Harris has gone from a guy that will knock down the open shot in the course and the flow of the offense from 3 to back to being no longer a threat and having no confidence in shooting that ball and not finishing around the rim that we've seen DeJuan Harris do in his years. Like, those things start to pop up late in the game where whether it's Wilson or Malik Newman or Ochai or Brown at times, one of those guys is going to go get the ball and finish, create, and be a dog and grind their way to finishing and getting a basket late. And that really doesn't happen on this team because the main threat is a guy that can't go and create his own shot with the ball in his hands.
Well, I hate the fact, too, even though the success rate would probably be pretty high if you entered the ball to Hunter Dickinson, game on the line. But when you're talking about a last possession, shot clock's off, it's a tie game, at worst you're going to overtime, how do you get the shot off before the buzzer? And that's all that happens, right?
Yeah.
You put the ball in the hands of a guard and say, you are taking the last shot, take every second off here, and then fire it up when you've got enough space. And with Dickinson, what has to happen? Well, you got to get in the ball with 5 seconds left. And then if he scores, great, but UCF has 3 or 4 seconds to maybe call timeout and draw up a play. And that was so frustrating. I was with my buddy last night, and I'm just going, imagine if Devon Dotson was on this team. He's the point guard. Not to take anything away from DeJuan Harris, but UCF knew with him up top, he's not going to shoot the ball. It is going to be passed into Hunter Dickinson. We're going to collapse on him, triple team him, and make them panic, make him turn it over. Worst case, we need to foul him and make him knock him down with a few seconds left. But with Dotson, you have to respect he might go around me. And really nobody on this team is the give me the ball, I'm going to go get my own shot in the way Frank Mason could, in the way Devontae Graham could, Malik Newman could, Devon Dotson could. And this team is so reliant on Hunter Dickinson, and it can work. We saw it in the North Carolina game where you isolate the backside, you throw it over the top, but UCF wasn't stupid.
No.
They knew that was going to be the play, and KJ Adams got it. He clearly panicked and said, I've got limited time left. I got to drive around, get it to somebody on the baseline. And that's where you either have to get it in and somebody, as you said, scream for the ball and say, even if I'm shooting a three, we are getting the last shot. They're not getting any opportunity.
Give me the ball. And the issue also with throwing it inside to Hunter Dickinson with limited amount of time is UCF was immediately doubling, whether that was big to big or it was guard doubling. They were doubling him from different places, and he was doing, for the most part, there were some really dumb passes that were, stolen, and he threw it and immediately was like, But there were also some hook shot throws, passes cross court that were pretty beautiful. But when they bring the double team, in his mind, does he think, okay, I've got enough time to maybe dribble back and throw out of this double team to get a shot off, or am I going to force it in the double team with a guy who's 7'2", who's right there? And that's not a great shot for Hunter Dickinson. The great part about when they're doubling is that the way KU was hitting threes last night, Hunter was passing out of that double team. You get it into him, they're immediately doubling. In his mind, does he think there's enough time to then kick it out? And maybe that was part of the conversation on the sideline. Hunter, you get it. There's immediate double. We got 9 seconds. You're good. You can dribble back. You can throw out of the double team. Or if they don't double you, then go to work and score, and let's get out of here. And let's go home and eat our dinner at 12:30 in the morning, as Bill Self said. I also want to give a shout-out to Johnny Dawkins, because when we talk about some of those threes that were open, and then we'll take a timeout, we'll talk about Coleman Hawkins and Jerome Tang. But we talk about those threes that were open. They were running a set, and they ran it multiple times until KU adjusted. And I'd have to imagine Tommy Lloyd and Arizona will run this, because they got Hunter or Flory into a screen and roll at the top. So the big man came and set a screen, let's say to the left side of the ball handler, to the right shoulder of the defender. He comes and sets a screen at the top of the key. The guy goes off the screen, which Hunter then hedges, right? Then you've got the guy who's trying to get back on the ball, Hunter then retreating to get back and scramble. But while that's happening, the big man then goes to the other wing to set a screen for the shooter to come up, and there's nobody to help on that guy because Hunter or Flory are working to get back on the big man, which is going back to the lane. And now I'm going back to the lane. Oh, wait, I can't come and help out on the screen over there because the big man screened here and then immediately went to the wing to screen, and there's an open three. That happened, 3 or 4 times until KU adjusted. Now, if Arizona runs it tonight, I think KU will probably be ready for it. But shout out to Johnny Dawkins, that saw that when KU, when they're putting a screen and roll with Hunter or Flory, that when they're hedging and scrambling to get back, they just go straight back to the basket, which is smart. But, hey, let's get open shots for our shooters. This guy's going to screen and then go set another screen and get a wing shooter open with nobody around him, an open shot, and that's what we talk about. In rhythm, open shots, probably going to fall in Division I. So Johnny Dawkins also gets paid to coach. He's been around a long time. So shout out to him with a few of those sets. Those were pretty smart and pretty good. KU eventually adjusted, but when they make 3 or 4 of them, you'd like to see the players be able to adjust quicker. And Bill Self might have said, hey, here's what they're doing. We've got to do this and this. But then you got to execute it as well because, again, that wasn't the play out of the timeout to throw it to KJ Adams. As Bill Self said, we just didn't execute. I mean, this was the play. Like, I guarantee you Bill Self has options off of the original play to get it into Hunter. If he's not there, here's what we're doing. We're doing this. It's not. If he's not there, bleep it. Somebody do something. You get open. You be working like Patrick Mahomes on Wasp. Hey, you get open.
And it's definitely not bleep it. Let KJ Adams do something. If that
Right.
is the emergency plan.
Bleep it. KJ down there somewhere.
Get it to a guard.
That's right. Hey, they won, and now they got Arizona tonight. And it's a great point by Jack in saying if this was the regular season, you probably feel worse about it. Postseason, hey, survive, advance, move on, see if you can get a little bit better. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Not surviving and advancing K-State. We'll talk about Coleman Hawkins, his thoughts, Jerome Tang, and where this program goes from here. More Zone next. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Jack Johnson hanging out with us for a couple more segments. Dylan Michaels, as always, hanging out with us. SEC tournament, Big 12 tournament going on. And do want to remind you that Miller Lite Fan Fest is going on. So you can go down there, hang out, kick it, and, with the boys down there at Miller Lite Fan Fest. On Sports Radio 810 WHB. I think Steven will be down there hanging out, holding court. Maybe Nate down there holding court as well. That's right. That's how everybody feels about it, right? That's how we felt the last couple days. 100%, man. Iowa State won, thank goodness. That's always good when they win. So they can hang around a little bit more. So fantastic. But do want to remind you that Sports Radio 810, WHB, and Miller Lite Fan Fest there at the Power and Light District that we bring you this particular year. That you can go down there with the parties and the contest and the live music and the great food and all of that stuff, which is really, really cool stuff. 913-912-4810 is the text line. It is brought to you by the CW Farm and Ranch Venue, River Bluff Brewery, and Church of the Resurrection. Let's talk about K-State. They lose last night to Baylor, and a game where they just couldn't get it going offensively, missed their first few shots, or Coleman Hawkins missed his first few shots. Gasson was a beast, was a dog in the game, scoring 11 of the first 15 for K-State. And, man, he has become such a good player with this team. But after the game was really that the conversation took place. And we'll play clip 4 later on, the full conversation with Coleman Hawkins in the post-game locker room. But let's play clip 5 here. That is, this is the shorter version of Coleman Hawkins and the emotions that were pouring out of him as he was sitting at his locker, still full uniform on, and the end of his career, and talking about what this season was. Here's Coleman Hawkins postgame.
My heart breaks for the team because these guys haven't experienced some of the things I've experienced. And, I really wanted to come in and impact the program. Man, I'm sorry for crying. It hurts, but I really wanted to come in and impact the program. And, some of the stuff, the outcome, obviously wasn't what we wanted, but, if someone asks me if I regret coming here, I tell them, I don't regret being my team, the coaching staff, the people I met, and my heart just breaks for them because, like I said, they just haven't experienced some of the things I experienced in my career. But same thing for the fans, because I feel like I let a lot of people down. And I feel like I did a poor job of letting people talk about me and it affect my play. And it was evident all year, and I wish I could just go back and block out everything, not for myself, but for the team, so we could have had a more successful year. But, this is a learning lesson for me, and I wish the best for the future of this program.
So he had about 5 more minutes of different questions and weighing in, but that's the main part that people have been hearing and talking about. And so I think there's a couple of takeaways from this that I was hearing last night and thinking about it this morning. The first, maybe this wasn't the first one, but this was the first one I'll bring up. I think there's a question in today's day and age with college basketball and the NIL era and the portal era of how much these things are transactional versus how much a player is going there because he wants to play basketball for that school or that coaching staff or his team. And at times, I do think there were questions about whether this K-State team felt transactional more than, as Jerome Tang talked about, that first team of coming together and the love and all of that stuff. that there's clearly a love and now a pain for Coleman Hawkins that the season is over, that he doesn't get to play basketball with this team anymore. So that's one of the things, one of the lessons and takeaway is even in the NIL and the portal era that there is a passion and a connection with the players, the teammates, the coaching staff, and the school. As he said, I hope nothing but the best for this program moving forward. I feel bad from an emotional standpoint for Coleman Hawkins because the money probably makes it easier to have to deal with some things from the bigger picture. Certainly those of us that have lived longer lives and know what that money can do, as opposed to in college when you've got your dorm paid for, your food paid for, you got some living expenses paid for, you're traveling, you're staying at the nicest hotels. Like now you got $2 million as opposed to being out and about and working paycheck to paycheck. With the $2 million, you're like, you know what, that can make a lot of those feelings, a lot of the social media commentary can maybe it won't cut as sharply as it would if you were broke and didn't have as much money. So there is that aspect in hearing his emotions from last night. But what stood out to me is when he said, I wish I could go back and just ignore the social media stuff. I wish I could go back and just not pay attention to that and just play basketball. And I think that's one of the lessons here that everybody has to deal with, because in the moment, people act a certain way in the moment. When you're emotional and charged up, you may act a certain way that 2 hours later, it would be completely different. 24 hours earlier might be completely different. 24 hours later might be completely different. In the moment, that is difficult. And I think it's difficult for everybody. It's difficult for me, like when it comes to social media. Like I've had to learn over the 20 years plus of being on the air, and especially with social media now with Twitter and 2008 to now, of like trying to let it roll off your back and just not pay attention to it. But it is difficult still, because 99 people can say, hey man, that was awesome, and one person was like, yeah, you're terrible, you suck. And it's like, well, I should cater to that one person, because why did he not like it? So these other 99, they're going to stay around. But if I get this one that's not happy, then boom, I got all 100, and that stays with you. And that's difficult to try to get over. But it's hard in today's day and age when we are talking about professional basketball. I mean, we're talking about he's making $2 million to play at K-State. I think the emotions are real. I think there is a connection with this team. It feels less transactional when he has those emotions. But this is what you sign up for. And it's like, oh, the coaches, we've got pressure to go and make the tournament every year. We're getting but you're getting all that money, then don't cash the check. Like if you don't want the pressure that comes with making sure that every year you need to be in the tournament, if you're making $5 million, then do something else. Then don't cash the check. I bet the check is nice when it clears. So if that's too much, then go do something else. And with Coleman Hawkins, he's 23. Like, I think it's a difference between 23, 24 years old as opposed to 17 or 18 years old and trying to deal with these things. And so this is going to be just simply a part of it. People are going to know that guys are getting paid, and it's going to be tougher, and people are going to view it differently than we did in the past when it was, well, this guy's getting a full ride scholarship. I had to pay my way. I don't feel bad for this guy. I had to pay for college. Now it's, that dude's getting $2 million. Play better.
And school paid for.
And school, right, both, and school paid for.
And I don't know if it's been the money that has changed a lot of people's opinions, because you go back 10 years, I mean, social media wasn't as rampant as it is now, but guys still got threats and mean things said about them, and there weren't many outlets to go and see everything, where unfortunately in this day and age, not just us, but college athletes and pros for that matter, they are online. There are players that after the game go and search their name.
By there are players, you mean every?
Every player. There you go.
Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah, way more than not. I mean, Steven and Todd tell the story all the time. They go into the Chiefs locker room, and there are guys Mahomes
phone.
sitting down at their
Millionaires.
Yes.
Adults.
Mahomes is worth $500 million more. I mean, he got a $500 million contract, and he's making like $20-30 million in endorsements in the offseason. And yet, after the game, he's scrolling Twitter before he even goes to the podium to talk. Like, like that dude's making $40-50 million a year and still wondering what people think about him.
Yeah, and we can have sympathy toward that. As you said with Coleman Hawkins, you can feel sympathy for the true raw emotion he was showing everybody there in the locker room. And I don't believe that he is one of those guys that is doing it for a front feel sympathy for me. I played poorly, and since I am now emotional, you should feel bad for me. I don't believe he's doing that. I think that this entire season was so much the opposite of what he thought it was going to be coming in. I'd imagine that coming to K-State, he went, I'm leaving Illinois to come here. I chose K-State, therefore the fan base is going to embrace me of, wow, you could have gone anywhere, but you came here to get us back to the NCAA tournament, to have another deep postseason run, and you're going to be the face. And when things didn't go well, that was the first instinct of, well, shoot, what are people saying about me now? Oh, now I'm seeing that people are threatening me. As he brought that up after the Drake game in Kansas City of what's being messaged to me. Of people wishing death and terrible, or what was it, breaking my leg or something?
Yeah,
or
I hope
tearing
you break
my
your leg.
Something like that. And we saw Zeke Mayo, same thing in the Texas Tech game.
Yeah.
And that's not going to stop. Players are going to be online. And even if they do delete social media, mentally that's still in your head after a bad game, which last night, it was not what he did the first night where he put up 26. It was a bad performance. It happens. We all know that. It's just about not focusing on the guy who has an egg profile pic or has 3 followers saying these terrible things. It's more so about embracing the people that do tell you, hey, that was a nice job. Hey, we know how hard you're working. We know it's a human game here. Shots aren't going to fall. You're not going to put up 30 points every single night. And he did have that pressure coming in of, you are the $2 million star. You are supposed to be one of the best players in the country. And when you don't play that well, yeah, there are going to be people that say that. And I agree with what he says. Going back, when things got ugly, when things were not going well, it should have been we need to come together as a team, where it almost looked like it fractured them early on.
And if it's too much for you, then stay at Illinois and don't take the $2 million check. I mean, you've got to know that when you're doing those things that there are going to be added expectations, and maybe he put more pressure on himself, and maybe this is the pressure flowing out of him of, he was already expecting more from this season from himself than what happened. He expected to be carrying this program into the NCAA tournament and making a run and all of those things. And the dreams you have when it's like, oh, we got this guy, and I'm the one the straw that'll stir the drink as the point forward, and the offense will be running around me, and I'm going to be, dishing, and guys are going to be scoring, and then I can score. And then you look back, and it's just been a really rough season, up and down, and some struggles along the way and some criticisms along the way. But that's part of what you sign up for. It's like, hey, you want to do a sports radio show for 4 hours, like, that the tweets and texts and people are going to reach out, and they're going to have an opinion.
Can't please everyone.
Yeah, they're going to have an opinion. It comes with the territory. Like,
here's the other thing too.
And if I don't want that to happen, then I can quit. I can do another job then, and just go and work in an office during the day. And the only people that I have to deal with is John and Jennifer and Karen, who didn't like my TPS report.
But the other thing too is gambling. Like,
that's true.
That
too.
is a
There's
massive
more outlets
addition.
and
and there's
ways.
more fans of your game that wouldn't have cared or watched any other time. But because maybe they put a parlay together and there's 3 green check marks, but the one X is Coleman Hawkins didn't get 8 rebounds.
I
or
had
20
K-State plus 7.5 against Baylor.
So not only are you
played.
getting paid $2 million and getting a scholarship, you just cost me money. Now, I'm not saying that this is dumb. This is dumb thinking. You shouldn't blame it. This is your money that you're willing to bet. You better be willing to lose it.
Yeah.
That's just what's going to happen, too, is that there are idiots that are going to lose money and then blame the kid because he's just playing a game that you put your money on.
Yeah. But it is the world we're in now. I mean, there's no going back.
Oh, for sure.
There's no going back because
and we don't. We've wanted these kids to get paid forever.
Yeah, and maybe there would have been more guardrails in place. Maybe if the $2 million wasn't a public, like how much did AJ Storr get? I don't know.
No,
it was a large sum, I'd imagine.
I imagine it was a pretty large sum. If it was public, wouldn't we hear that constantly about AJ Storr? This guy's getting 1.5 to do that. This guy's getting 1.25. Like, this guy got $1 million to play like that.
That seems to be either on the agent or the school.
Yeah,
like
but
that shouldn't be. If it's not public knowledge, there's no reason it should be.
Or it's on another school that didn't get him and wanted to let people know that we didn't get him because we weren't paying $2 million for him.
And you think it had to be public. Why? Because he picked Kansas State. It was a team that usually, or at least we didn't know before this offseason, they could go that high with NIL. When Kentucky or KU or Duke lands a guy, you don't hear it because it's, well, that makes sense. They've got a lot of NIL money. With K-State, it was, they've got $2 million to go get Coleman Hawkins. That, to me, is why it had to become public, because there were too many questions out there. Why is he picking K-State? Well, because they gave him $2 million.
Yeah. What was the price tag to have him go to K-State? Oh, it was $2 million. I do think there's an element of a stronger possibility of a team that did not land Coleman Hawkins that wanted to make sure that they could release it through a media member here or there as to, yeah, we weren't going to go to $2 million. I mean, we were willing to pay him. Like, we had 7 figures for him, but we're not going to 2 for him. So, yeah, we didn't end up with Coleman Hawkins. And then that's like, well, Coleman Hawkins goes to K-State, and he got about $2 million, and then that becomes fact. And then it's like, well, that's what he got. He got that money. I would guess it came more from a team that was trying to recruit him that didn't land him rather than anybody from K-State or from Coleman in saying, hey, here's how much I got. Or Jerome Tang bragging to boosters about, hey, we gave Coleman Hawkins $2 million. Hell yeah, we got a team coming up. Doesn't seem like something Jerome Tang would do. So, I do think that's part of the story, though, is when you know the number, it makes it easier to get frustrated because we don't know how much A.J. Storr got. Well, maybe he's playing for the love of Kansas.
And
maybe he didn't get a lot of money. Maybe he's just playing because he wanted to go to Kansas.
The other leak, it could be the booster. It could be whoever cut the check. Guess what I did?
Give that guy $2 million for that thing. I thought we were going to make the tournament. $2 million. Jerome, I think you need to go ask somebody else for somebody. I don't know, but it is the world we live in, and there's going to be. I think the fans of that team, there will be sympathy that's there for the player. I think anybody outside of fans of that team would have a hard time feeling sympathy. But I do think even with money, there's still stress and pressures that come along with that. But I'll just go ahead and speak for a lot of people and say, I'll take my chances in having to deal with the pressures of getting $2 million. So
a lot of his emotion was more like, hey, I let my brothers down.
Right.
It wasn't, I got
go,
paid.
Yes, I wish I could go back and ignore everything and just play basketball. I'm emotional because these guys haven't experienced what I've got to experience and going to the tournament and making those runs, and you're on the national stage and everybody's watching, and you got these big press conferences after the game and all the media's there. You got 5 people on the stage and the coach and all of that stuff, just the whole thing, the shoot around, the fans are there. You get to experience that. These guys don't, and that sucks for them. But also he doesn't get to experience it again either. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. We'll talk with Kent Swanson at 11 o'clock, Myron Medcalf, College Basketball Insider at noon, Matt Tate, R1S1, covering the Kansas Jayhawks at 1 o'clock. More Zone next. Dylan's thoughts on this later on, but Jack, I'll get you to weigh in here. What do you think of the task tonight for KU against a rested Arizona team up here? Sort of the same team, right? They're talented as well. I don't really care about Arizona losing on Saturday. I don't think this team was sitting there with revenge on their mind and, their mouth is watering to get KU again. But KU does play in overtime. What do you think of tonight?
Let's see how fatigued they are. They're going to need more minutes from Diggy Coit, AJ Storr once again. Rylan Griffin's got to play more. You have to get your bench involved in this one because it's not realistic to believe that all the guys that played 40 minutes can do it again tonight against a better team.
4 guys played at least 36 minutes last night, and KJ Adams played 40 and played a tough 40 against Keyshawn Hall as well. Thank you, Jack.
Of course.
Ken Swanson next. We'll talk with Myron Metcalf, host at ESPN Radio and our college basketball insider. Get his thoughts on these conference tournaments going on. KU in action tonight. K-State losing last night. The Coleman Hawkins emotions. We'll get his thoughts on that. And then Mizzou in action against Mississippi State. Unlike Arizona, they got to watch KU play an overtime game and leave it all out there on the floor. Missouri watched Mississippi State win by 30 and not have to play any of their guys the last 10 minutes of the game. They'll be arrested, Mississippi State, that also played on that court before. So Missouri. Kent Swanson joining us here from KCSN to talk some NFL football, some Chiefs football. Kent, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing tremendous. I can't tell you how much the sun has affected my mood. I feel like an entirely new person the last week and a half. It's been great. So, and we get all this free agency news, man. The vibes are high right now. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm sitting around today and I'm not seeing any news today. We saw, Monday was hot and heavy, Tuesday still going on, Wednesday was the start of the league year, so some of these signings were all of a sudden breaking news or something like that. It was hey, the Chiefs signed Jalen Moore. Look, Jalen Moore is getting on a plane heading to Kansas City. Holy bleep! Let's look at Jalen Moore. Wait, I thought they signed on Wednesday. But then today, not really seeing any news out there. And certainly there are a number of guys that could be available to the Chiefs. They'll be making some minor moves and, the cap situation with freeing up the cap space yesterday. So a lot of stuff to get into, Kent. Let's start with this. Jalen Moore was, let me ask you this then. Of the moves they have made, bringing back Nick Bolton, re-signing Hollywood, Jalen Moore, Christian Fulton, which of those do you think is the bigger story and the bigger move by the Chiefs for this upcoming season?
Yeah, of the ones you just listed,
Yep.
I think I'd probably say it is more. I think, the Chiefs are trying to make the best out of a tough situation. And I'll be honest with you, I don't, blame them at all for the process that they've used to navigate the tackle situation over the last few years. I know some people are frustrated, but this is a champagne problem because your team continues to be picking in the 30s, continuing to win Super Bowls despite not having great tackle play over the last few years. So I do think, though, that this is the biggest story. The Chiefs invested a little bit of money, decent amount of money, into a player that hasn't played a full season in the National Football League worth of starts. There's some good moments on tape. There's some competent and capable tackle play on tape. Maybe doesn't completely fit everything that they've preferred or stylistically the way that they've had their tackles play in the past. But, we're going to find out. This is a little experimental with what they're trying to do here at the tackle position. But I do appreciate that they have they've created a path and they've given themselves an entire offseason to figure out how this is going to look. But it's a very fascinating story, and I think it's going to be one that we carry all the way into at least the first month of the regular season.
Do you like the move? Do you like the signing of Jalen Moore? And obviously money matters, so cost acquisition is always a part of the story and the opinion. So this move, 2 years, the $30 million, 21 and a quarter essentially guaranteed, but they do have an out after year one. So the totality of the move, do you like that for the Chiefs bringing in Jalen Moore?
I don't know if "like's" the right word, but understand is probably
Okay.
the word for me. I don't know if I'm a big fan necessarily, but I do think that the Chiefs are trying to make the best of a very bad situation. And so that's where under that prism, sure, I think it's a good move. They didn't, they were by all indications going to be interested in Ronnie Stanley, which, by the way, he has his warts too. He hasn't been able to stay healthy consistently over the course of his career, and he garnered $20 million a year as a tackle that's going to be over the age of 30.
And the
So you look
reports
at him-
from Albert Breer, by the way, were that the Patriots were willing to go to 24 for him. So
Yeah.
I don't think the Chiefs would have even got him because I think the Patriots, with all the money, were going to outbid the Chiefs no matter what they offered.
Right. And so you've got that, and that wasn't looking great for them and their, their outlook. And then Dan Moore, the other big tackle signing going, basically multiple years locked in with Dan Moore are the Tennessee Titans, and he's been fine to below average as a tackle over the course of his early career. So not locking themselves up into a long-term situation that they may not love with a Dan Moore, and then giving themselves a little bit of flexibility to get out if the Jalen Moore experience doesn't work. I think they did a good job. I think they did what they could in trying to navigate a very difficult situation. So I don't blame them, and I don't know if I love the move, but I understand it 100%, and I think they did the best that they could.
So if we eliminate money and all of that from the conversation, did they get better at tackle from what they got last year? And let's even throw in 2023 from Donovan Smith. Did they get better and from what you've seen so far in a small sample size, but 4 games in a row starting for the 49ers and filling in for Trent Williams is a decent enough sample size to maybe get an idea of what the Chiefs saw. Are they improved at tackle from last year and even 2023 with Donovan Smith?
I think they're better at tackle from last year. There's a little bit of projection there, I think, because it is a small sample size, and there are some things that Jalen Moore is going to have to do a little bit differently in Kansas City that maybe he wasn't asked to do in San Francisco. I do think they're in a better situation at left tackle than they were last year. And that's an optimistic perspective, I think, because I think it's fair to listen to the people that are, questioning it because of the lack of experience. I actually think that Jalen Moore every now and then, and maybe it's just because he's wearing number 76, he looked a little bit Donovan Smith-ish to me at times on tape when I went back and watched it. I think there's some similarities there. Not the fleetest of foot tackles, but, capable and competitive every passing down. I think there's some similarities there between, what we saw to Donovan Smith and Jalen Moore now, but I think there's a little bit more upside in athletic ability, just a little bit more for Jalen Moore. So I think they're better. I think they can be better. And from an optimist's perspective, which I tend to be with the situation, I think they will be better. I think the Chiefs know how big of an issue this was last season, and I think having this runway and this time to know what the left tackle situation is going to be, and having a plan that they can build around for the next 6 months is really important for Jalen Moore's success here.
Not saying this won't happen when he gets on the field, but from watching all of the reps in the games, and by the way, NFL Pro Plus is just
amazing.
Oh my God, dude! Just to put in his name, passing situations, third downs, and watch every single rep immediately. It's just unbelievable. Just a click of a button. Where have you been my whole life? I've been searching for you. We're getting married tomorrow. Pumped about it. But getting that guy and watching all of the reps from him, not saying that it won't happen, but the thing that stood out to me, Kent, is if he lost, the old saying of dying a slow death, there wasn't a play to where, oh, God, he just got whipped. Okay, that was just a whiff, and he's the quarterback is SOL. The whole play is blown up because of that. That he might have lost a rep, but it wasn't for instance, a number of the sacks that Dan Moore gave up, watching all of those, because, by the way, you can also put an NFL Pro Plus and just say sacks, and so you can see immediately all of the different sacks. Boy, he got beat pretty quickly on a number of those plays, just simply whipped, and that play's blown up. So giving Mahomes maybe even a little bit more time than a quick loss like we saw with Kingsley or Wanya at times last year. But again, not saying that won't happen, not saying he won't have some whiffs and the play just gets blown up. But that was one of the things that stood out to me, Kent, is there was a little more consistency in his play, that even if he lost a rep, it wasn't a quick death. It was more of a dying a slow death, and he was still working. It also wasn't Orlando Brown getting beat and stopping and watching the play. It was getting beat around the outside and then running with the guy to even try to put a hand on him to wash him out.
I think one of the things the Chiefs are banking on is how competitive Moore is, play in and play out, and that kind of speaks to what you're talking about there. I do think the Niners are a very tackle-friendly offense. Yes. And so, the ball was getting out very quickly for them at times. They don't necessarily. So there's different types of pass sets that tackles are asked to execute, right? And so we're not going to get into all the details of them, but sometimes the tackle is jumping out, even in pass protection on the defensive end immediately. Sometimes they're taking a 45-degree angle pass set to widen the pocket and meet the tackle up the arc. Sometimes they're vertical setting, which is they're giving ground vertically in a straight back manner to help put themselves in a better position to absorb and receive the tackle or the defensive end, right? There's some variations to pass sets. There are blind spots on tape that we haven't really got to see Jalen Moore execute that the Chiefs have historically asked. Asked the tackles to do, right? So we haven't seen what he's capable of doing there. And maybe this was a moment that the Chiefs look a little bit differently at what they've asked their tackles to do. So, I think there's some middle ground there that we're going to have to identify with Jalen Moore. But at a base level, the competitive nature that he had in those reps, I think, is one of the things that the Chiefs really are banking on, and you're hoping that whether it's running back a lot of the same things schematically that they do in pass protection, or whether it's modifying a little bit to help play to Jalen Moore's strengths, that they're able to find what works and lean on some of the things that maybe are not as technical or as schematic.
The last one on Jalen Moore, and then we'll move on to some other things. One of my takeaways is also the blind spot's a good one. I love to hear that term is a great one because it shows that there might be a deficiency, but we don't know it's a deficiency yet because of how San Francisco blocks and their tackles and getting more wide quicker on the play rather than dropping vertically, which the Chiefs tackles do, which allows him to almost eliminate the bull rush, like the power rush. If he's getting to that defensive end quicker, that guy doesn't have enough time to get that momentum and inertia going to really, unload that power to knock the guy back and knock him off his anchor. One of the things that I came away with, Kent, acknowledging the blind spots, is I didn't see like a real true weakness. I didn't see like an just a completely a great trait that it's like, wow, this guy, if he does this, that's a lockdown left tackle, boom. I didn't see any weakness that was there that stood out. So he's going to get beat. I think he'll win some, but I also don't think he's sort of matchup dependent. And I don't know what he'll look like against Benito. Maybe he will be matchup dependent against guys that are quicker on the outside. I would love for them to get Orlando Brown left tackle play, considering what we've seen the last couple of years. But Orlando Brown was sort of matchup dependent because a speed rusher would get around him. Power rusher, toast. Orlando Brown, he touches you, you're done. He's a massive human being, and you're not going anywhere. Where it seems like Jalen Moore can handle the bull rush, he seems to be athletic enough to where it won't be a complete liability if he's going up against a speed rusher, that there isn't an overwhelming trait, but I didn't see like a glaring red flag weakness that, okay, Joe Thuney bull rush, that's going to be rough for him because he doesn't have the lead on the backside to anchor the way that some other guys do.
Yeah, I think that's the hope, right? I think that's a great way to frame it. If there's no dominant trait, there's also
dominant's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Good God, Jason. All right, I'm going to go to bed.
There's no dominant trait, but there's also no I don't think there's a huge glaring weakness. I do have my concerns with him up the arc, depending on how the Chiefs are going to have him set. And he doesn't have the most ideal length at the position either. I think he actually has sub 34-inch arms, which the Chiefs are more lenient on that threshold when you've got NFL tape, which they do on him. But I think we also just don't know that we don't know enough yet there. And I think that's where there's just a lot of projection to this than it is just definitively knowing what you've got there, because we've seen Wanya Morris look capable in a small sample size. I remember last year, I think we saw him say, in 2023, it was like, Wanya Morris is doing some good things there. There's some things to like there, and it just didn't work out, right? So I do have the places of concern. I think there's a potential he has some problems up the arc, but We don't really know yet.
Yeah.
We'll find out. It's going to be it, but it's, again, like I think that's where him being so competitive, play in, play out matters, because he's willing to, sell out to try to keep a guy up the arc every play.
Ken Swanson's our guest, KCSN, the KC Laboratory Podcast. Christian Fulton signed, and I wanted them to sign a cornerback. I didn't know who they would go out and get. I thought maybe Rasul Douglas on a one-year deal. Maybe something like that. But Christian Fulton, I like the deal. What do you think of Christian Fulton, and where does he fit? What's the impact with Fulton coming in as a free agent?
Well, we absolutely loved Christian Fulton in the KCSN draft guide. I think it was back in 2020, 2021, one of those years. Huge fans of him coming out. By the way, gum.co/KCSN25 if you want 300 pages on Chief-specific draft content leading up to this draft. But he's got the ideal size, frame, mentality, really good against the run, good as a press corner. I think he's a fantastic fit for the Chiefs and what they want to do at the cornerback position. I love that they invested in him in a multi-year deal that kind of helps them get back to some of the stuff that they like to do in the back seven in 2023 when the defense was elite, and also serves as kind of a bridge as the Chiefs are going to definitely be making some transitions, between 25 and 26 when, that 2022 draft class kind of comes off the books and the bill comes due on some of those players, and they're not going to have them. So you've kind of got some continuity for next season, but you've also gotten, better at the cornerback spot in 2025. He fits tremendously. I think, he'll be able to play at the line of scrimmage more than he did last season, which I think will be good for his skill set and fit well with, what the Chiefs prefer to do on the outside. So I think it was a really savvy move. I think it was a really smart move. And, obviously there's concerns about health with him. But if he stays healthy, I think this is going to be a steal in Steve Spagnuolo's scheme.
Does it move McDuffie to play more slot and Shamari Connor to play more safety, roaming, rover type role on this team, rather than what it felt like the Chiefs wanted to make Shamari Connor the slot? Didn't necessarily look like it was working all that well. Jalen Watson's injury exacerbated the problem with Joshua Williams and Najee Johnson not playing well. That now if you've got and two guys on the outside that could be with questions of health, with Jalen Watson and Christian Fulton, that when healthy, you put those guys on the outside and Trent McDuffie at the slot, and you got better at two positions from last year, again, assuming health?
That's a piece of the logic for sure. I think being able to give yourself the flexibility to be able to do that is part of why Christian Fulton is here, because that does give them the freedom to move, Trent McDuffie back inside a little bit more as needed, and, give them more options there. I don't know what it means for Shamari Connor's outlook or, a Christian Roland Wallace's outlook, how that all plays out, because they found some intriguing slot defense. Roland Wallace was an intriguing slot defender. Both he and Connor have played from a 2 deep alignment, so maybe there's plans to utilize them as a deep safety a little bit more. We'll see what they decide to do there. But I think they definitely got better at 2 positions, bringing Christian Fulton in.
Visiting with Kent Swanson, KCSN, the KC Laboratory Podcast. All right, Trey Smith, he signs his franchise tag. And then the Chiefs clear every single dollar they can clear from Patrick Mahomes' roster bonus to signing bonus, and every dollar they can clear and free up with Chris Jones' signing bonus, roster bonus, which I think tells me that they're not close with Trey Smith. So what do you make of the Trey Smith situation? Do you think something will get done soon-ish, or should we just go ahead and sit back and wait for the summer for them to get something done with Trey?
I don't think something is happening quickly. I really don't. And, it does seem like there's been a lot of, I think there was some expectations that the Chiefs wouldn't tag Trey Smith, and then they do.
Yeah.
And then the market kind of, you kind of see what the market looks like. And I think there's complicating factors that have contributed, to that negotiation that are going to make it extend longer than anticipated, right? And kind of finding out a little bit about the markets for these guys and finding out a little bit about what it might look for Trey Smith in the open market probably, kind of helps set this course. I'm fascinated by what the Chiefs are doing here and how they're going to navigate. And they're used to this, right? Last season, things got held up a little bit because of, tagging L'Jarius Sneed and keeping a lot of your cap space inflexible because you've, got that giant cap hit on for an extended period of time, and that dragged on.
Mm-hmm.
Leaning into, going a full Mahomes restructure and having to restructure Chris Jones to make sure you have enough cap space to, fill out the rest of your roster because you've got Trey Smith, on the tag for $23 million. That is, it's interesting. I think we're gonna be waiting a while until this deal finally gets done with Trey Smith, just because of just all of the indicators that you talked about and we just got done talking about. It's like it seems like the Chiefs are prepared to move around this offseason without a Trey Smith extension. And I will say, any cap space that they create in 2025 that they don't use can be carried over into 2026.
Yep.
So they might just be giving some cash up front to have, options open. And if they do come to an agreement with Trey Smith on an extension, any cap savings that they get there, they can just move back into 2025. Mm-hmm. And now it's just more about cash than it is anything.
Yeah, it tells me a couple things. That next year or next offseason, they're going to completely restructure Patrick Mahomes' contract again like they did before 2023
sure.
because he's only got a $10 million roster bonus and a $75 million cap hit. So you can only free up about you can only free up about $2 or $3 million on a cap hit there. So they will restructure his deal. It won't be, take from the roster, give it to signing. Nope. It's a complete restructure from Mahomes' contract next year. And also, I do think it's newsworthy that they didn't tap into Juwan Taylor's contract and maneuver money around there to give them the flexibility of being able to walk after the end of this year, as opposed to if they went and tapped into some money from Juwan Taylor, it would probably be an indication that he's going to be a Kansas City Chief even in his fourth year. But so I just, they did that a couple of times with Joe Thuney, and it made it, a little bit more difficult to sort of move on from Joe Thuney. And Juwan Taylor has the same exact cap number next year as he does this year. Only, it's like $7.3 million of a dead cap hit that they didn't make that a $15 million dead cap hit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. To free up money this year. I think that's newsworthy that they sort of view it the same way we do, that you're going into the last year of Juwan Taylor. Last one for you, Kent, 30 seconds or less if you can think of a couple names that you'd like to see them sign off the top of your head.
Yeah, I'd go look at, the defensive line. Charles Omenihu, bring him back. I think would make sense at this point. Like, it doesn't seem like the market's been super hot for him.
Seems like the market might come back to the Chiefs for Omenihu than maybe what we thought it would be, or maybe what he thought it would be.
For sure. Morgan Fox on the defensive tackle. Just try to get some bodies along the interior there. So, I think it's even bringing back some of the guys that they had last year. Derek Nottie would make sense at this point, too. So I think I'd focus on the defensive line right now.
Yep. I would, a total random one and totally a deep cut would be, I'd like to see him go and sign Isaiah Simmons and bring him in because they lose Justin Watson. He's a four-phase guy for Spags. I know they brought some other guys back, but Isaiah Simmons, if nothing else, was a special team stud. And I'd like to see every single defensive coordinator's like, let me see what I could do with him. I'd like to see what Spags does with him. And it might be like 1 year, $2 million, something like that. And he'd be coming back home to Kansas City. I think
that's less than Jack Cochran got with the right of first refusal tag that the Chiefs just gave him. So
yeah, so I mean, that's a guy that special team ace, if anything. That size speed combination, Tobe would figure out how to use him. Certainly a four-phase guy with Watson gone, but also I'd like to see what Spags could do with him and moving him around the field and trying to do something that no defensive coordinator has figured out how to do, which is tap into what his natural physical gifts are that made him a top 10 pick. So it'd be a cheaper one that would be there, but that's just a name that's out there too. Kent Swanson, KCSN, the KC Laboratory Podcast. Kent, you're the man. Appreciate the time as always, brother. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, and we'll see if anything has changed since then with the Chiefs signing. Appreciate you, man.
Yep, anytime.
All right, there's Kent Swanson, KCSN, the KC Laboratory Podcast. We'll see what happens with the Chiefs. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back on the other side. Matt Stafford was on New Heights yesterday, and he said something talking about being a veteran quarterback as opposed to a rookie quarterback. And it was a flashing red light to what was said at the Combine by Brett Veach and Andy Reid about Patrick Mahomes. We'll explain next. 4 on Iowa State right now, 16 minutes to go. That game just underway, and an upset is a brewing. It's not UCLA, that would have been a fun pun, but in the ACC tournament, and that is Georgia Tech, the 8 seed, taking on the 1 seed Duke. And Georgia Tech is leading 26-12 right now. The under 4 timeout. Cooper Flagg is 1 of 6 from the floor with 2 points, and Duke is 0 of 12 from behind the arc. And they are down by 14 points in the first half. 3:56 to go for Duke. 3:56 to go in the first half. They've got 12 points. They've played 16 minutes, and Duke has scored 12 points.
And we're already getting the crowd shots, which are just glorious.
Concerns.
Yes, Duke crowd shots of losing fans is always great.
Yep, concerns that are there. Duke is 0 of now 13 from behind the arc and has not attempted a free throw yet, because it's hard to attempt a free throw in the first half if you've already taken 13 threes. It means you're not really going and attacking. But yeah, good one there at T-Mobile as well with Iowa State and BYU. That should be a fun one, up and down game. BYU already has 11 points with 3.5 minutes played in this game, where Duke has scored 12 in the 16 minutes. All right, let's talk some football here with the Kansas City Chiefs. I want to play this comment. This was from yesterday's New Heights with Travis and Jason. Matt Stafford was on there, and he was asked about watching rookie quarterbacks, and he said something that to me stood out as I found it to be relating to Patrick Mahomes and relating to what we heard at the Combine from Brett Veach at the podium, and then Andy Reid when he was on with Chris Sims and Mike Florio with Pro Football Talk. So here's Matt Stafford. It's about a minute and a half, and this was just a question about, hey, what do you see when you're watching some of these rookies play football?
I like watching the young guys play because it kind of like revitalizes me, invigorates me a little bit. Like, golly, these guys are out there just playing carefree, ripping it. You know, sometimes when you have, you know, a bunch of years of experience, you got some scars too, right? And you're like, I mean, these guys are just letting it rip into this coverage and and I'm like, I remember CJ threw a touchdown. I think it was a preseason game. He threw like a bang 8 into 3 buzz right over the safety's head, and I was like, I saw him that year we played him or something or practiced against him. I was like, what are you doing, ripping the skinny right into rotation for a touchdown? He's like, hey man, they didn't play it right, and I'm like, I mean, just to be carefree enough to be like, you know what, shoot it in there and score. I'm like, man, I'd have been going that way. And you know, probably been 2nd, 6. We'd been happy with the 4-yard completion, but my man's trotting off the field with a touchdown.
That is real. I mean, I noticed that even just for me, like you get resistant to some things sometimes just because you've been burned on it before.
100%.
And like, I don't really try, and then you'll watch somebody else do it, and all of a sudden it like works out. You're like, man, am I wrong in this, or am I right? Like, what's going on here? I mean, it sounds like yours is pretty black and white, but
but like the further you go, no, I'm with you. The further you get in your career, you got to fight that sometimes, right? Where
for
you're like,
sure.
Man, like I know how they should be playing that defense,
and
they're not playing it right. But like I went over here and this was open, even though I know it shouldn't be. You know what I mean? You're like the teams that are really ultra like undisciplined on defense don't want to give away any secrets, but those are, but those are tough ones to play sometimes, right? Because you're like, you know, you may get a freebie and score or whatever, but a lot of times, man, you're passing something because you know the coverage and it's wide open because they blew it.
I'm listening to that, and as you're listening, everybody else listening to that has watched all of these snaps of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this year, you're thinking the same thing, right? Well, let's go back to the Combine. Here's Brett Veach from the Combine. This was a question about the average depth of target by the Chiefs. Matt Verderam was saying, hey, the average depth of target with Patrick Mahomes over the last couple of years has continued to decrease. What are the reasons for that? And here's Brett Veach's answer.
I think we approach every offseason where we want to get him not overthinking. You know, he's grown and developed so much where Coach Nagy and I talk about this, where he knows maybe too much at this point, where, I mean, he's seeing things that maybe defenses don't even do now because he's that far advanced.
Not overthinking, almost knows too much. He's seeing things that defenses aren't doing because he's too advanced. Let's hear Andy Reid. This was from the interview he did with Pro Football Talk And the question that started this conversation was from Mike Florio to Andy Reid saying, early in the game, Mahomes had a play action, and Worthy was running deep, and he was getting ready to throw it, and then he just stopped. And then he threw the dump off, for like a 3-yard gain. And here's Andy Reid's answer.
I think one of the positives we can get out of that game is we were able to get him going deep.
Yeah.
And that trust, I mean, it's a matter of a couple feet, just putting it out there and him to be able to go get it. And so we had worked so much on the short intermediate game, the crossing, all these things that he hadn't done, that I probably didn't put him in a position to do that enough.
Look, it makes a lot of sense hearing Matt Stafford and then hearing Jason Kelce, who was a guy that's also calling out coverage or sliding one way or another in protection for the quarterback and what the defense is doing and what game they might be running and what blitz, where it's coming from, what you've seen on tape, what you've seen on film. And as he said, Jason Kelce talking about what Matt Stafford was talking about and saying, quote, you get resistant because you've been burned by it before. So it's almost like, oh, that could be open, but I'm ignoring it because I know what to do on this play. That's not going to be open, so I'm already moving on from that. And Matt Stafford gave the example of C.J. Stroud in a preseason game his rookie year, saying that, the defense was running a bang 8. They run a bang 8 into a 3 buzz. He hits it over the top and thinking, what the hell are you doing throwing that ball? But it's a touchdown. And then he sees him, and it is in his mind, and Matt Stafford's like, dude, the hell are you doing throwing that ball for the touchdown? And C.J. Stroud's like, oh, they didn't play the defense correctly. And then Matt Stafford saying, yeah, well, I would have seen that, and then I would have just thrown the dump off, and hey, 4-yard gain. Okay, nice job. 2nd and 6. Hey, we got this little 4-yard gain, and we move on to the next play, and all good. But the Texans threw a touchdown on it, and Matt Stafford's thinking of 2nd down and 6. And thinking, nice job. Doesn't that feel like the Chiefs the last 2 years? And then Matt Stafford saying the further you get into your career, the more you have to fight that. Because you've seen so much already, and you start to eliminate routes because this is how this defense is playing it, so it's not going to be open. And C.J. Stroud didn't eliminate that route because he didn't think it was going to be open because how they were playing it. And then he said, well, they played it wrong. Yeah, well, this is what they showed. They should have played it this way. And Matt Stafford saying it, well, yeah, but I would have already thrown the dump off. I would have already gone over here and thrown the ball. And then Brett Veach saying, we got to get him to not overthink. Just play ball, get your feet set, trust the protection. But sometimes you can
paralysis
know
by
too
analysis.
Much. Right.
Yep.
Sometimes you can know too. And doesn't it feel like that? Mahomes early in his career was like, bleep it. No, I'm throwing the ball
down there somewhere.
Right, I'm throwing the ball.
50 and 5,000, but 12 picks.
Yes,
because we were just airing it out,
Throw
man.
the ball, man.
And honestly, nobody knew what Tyreek and him would. We didn't know we needed to put our safety in the parking lot before the game when he was out there. But
also, like, defenses didn't have the 2 deep. Defense didn't have some of those things.
Right.
But it was also like, I don't think Mahomes was eliminating routes pre-snap just because, well, they're going to cover it this way, so I know that's going to be taken away. That it was like, no, I'm going to. They're not playing it right, so let me throw it there. Let me just simply read where everybody's at. Oh, okay, that guy's in the wrong spot. Boom, touchdown. Okay, we got burned over here. Boom, touchdown. And, man, if they can get back to that to a certain degree, and then Andy Reid saying, that's one of the positives, is we got him throwing the ball deep. And then Andy Reid, he goes and takes the blame for it and saying, well, we've worked on so many short and intermediate stuff that maybe it's my fault that I've done too much of that we need to get the deep route going and everything. But I also say that, didn't we discuss this in the preseason when they were almost forcing it over the top? Oh, they're going to throw deep this year. They are forcing it to throw deep. So I don't know. I get Andy Reid making the
that's just a coach.
taking the blame.
That's why everyone loves to play for Andy Reid.
But I do think there's an element of Patrick Mahomes becoming a little more risk-averse, and as Matt Stafford saying, I wouldn't have thrown that pass that C.J. Stroud threw for a touchdown. I'm coming over here, and I'm dropping it off when we're picking up 4 yards, and we're going to keep it moving on 2nd down and 6. And C.J. Stroud threw a touchdown because he's so young and youthful, and who cares, Let's just have fun.
One of my favorite videos is when Gruden was doing those QB camps, and Mahomes is in there, and you can tell that Gruden's seeing the same thing that Andy's seeing because they both were in the Holmgren system. They are seeing the Brett Favre, the arm talent. If you can just rein this stallion in, then you have something special. He was saying that, I mean, it's funny because he threw a pick and do maybe triple coverage, double coverage, and he was saying, look at this guy, you just dump it off, speed read it, and you're done.
Yep.
Make the throw, move on. And it's almost like he's doing that out of habit, like Matt Stafford's saying, like Tom Brady probably did down the road as well, where it's I already know where to throw this ball before I even get to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, so I've already decided where I'm going with it. Take the ball, snap, throw it.
Because the defense says this is where it goes.
And maybe there's a degree of, okay, I know where I'm going with it. Take the ball, snap. Oh, wait, they are doing something different. Well, now I'm looking at my line.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust that the line is going to protect me now that I can't get the ball out quickly. So routes are happening while I'm looking at the back of my offensive line's jerseys to find an opening to get out to then reassess what's happening because I'm not trusting it. And maybe that's where Brett Veach is saying, 1, not overthink. 2, get your feet set, trust your offensive line, and we continue to put weapons around them. There is some news in the ACC out in Charlotte. We had mentioned that Duke was struggling. They were down 26-12. They've made a comeback. They're only down 31-26 with 12 seconds to go, but that is not the story there in Charlotte. The story is what could be a pretty severe injury to Cooper Flagg. He went up for a rebound and came down on his left leg, and it wasn't just a rolling of an ankle. It was as bad of an ankle roll as you'll see. It almost looked like the bone in his left ankle almost touched the floor.
That's the worst.
That's how bad the ankle roll was. It was like almost completely as a perpendicular.
When the side of your foot is flat as the bottom of your foot typically is, that's always the worst it can be.
It was parallel with the floor, the bottom of his foot, and perpendicular with his leg, and he didn't put weight on it after that.
No.
Had to be helped off the floor, goes to the sideline. They were looking at his ankle. He then gets up to go back to the locker room, and again, he's got to be helped off by 2 teammates, again, not putting any weight on that ankle. It's not where, he goes down and immediately is holding his knee or anything like that, but it could be something that 2 weeks from now we're talking about a round of 32 game where Cooper Flagg is hobbled and Duke is not the best version of themselves. And we could also be talking about a Sweet 16 game where Cooper Flagg re-injures it. That could be one of those things that 2 weeks from now is still not fully ready to go. Because
I mentioned Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Almost kind of similar. You got to win games.
Good God, it looked rough. Now, we say that, and Cooper Flagg's going to come out in the second half and drop 25 points.
With maybe the heaviest ankle tape you've ever seen in your life. They might cut off the circulation to the foot.
I would say there's zero chance if they think that he's done. Like, they got a 1 seed. You don't need to worry about this tournament. You get Cooper Flagg healthy.
You're still only down 5.
Yeah, they're down 5. They actually made a bigger comeback when Cooper. What I've been saying is Cooper Flagg's the problem with this. But yeah,
by subtraction.
Yeah, it ain't Kenyon Martin, but we don't know the extent of this injury with Cooper Flagg other than
he was just helped off. I mean,
he didn't put weight on the ankle again after he went down. He tried.
He tried to, and then couldn't.
He tried and immediately grimaces, and players helping him off the floor. And then tries to walk back to the locker room and immediately, it's like when you see a dog sort of that has a hurt leg and they immediately pull it back up, right?
Yep.
That's what happened with Cooper Flagg, and then 2 teammates had to help him back with only putting weight on his right leg. So there is a developing story that could change the complexion of the NCAA tournament if it is something that is going to be a nagging injury that might stay, or if it's something worse than just your spraining of ligaments and things like that, if there is something more there. So we'll see, hoping for the best, because good God, he's an amazing player, and you just don't want to see. I hate injuries, man. Cannot stand injuries. Let's turn injuries off.
Late season is the worst, too.
Yes. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this hour, and then we'll talk with Myron Metcalf. Certainly that's a developing story. We'll talk with Myron about that. More Zone next. beginning of this hour. And then, of course, those clips from Matt Stafford and Brett Veach and Andy Reid, and maybe just, I don't know, getting out of your head, something like that, just finding a way just to go and play football. But, yeah, we'll see. I've been, paying attention just in case, but there isn't any, breaking news or anything like that in the NFL with any signings or anything. So it's gotten a little quieter over the last, 24 hours or so. Maybe even like 16 hours or so. It's gotten quieter. We'll see. Like Mike Williams was somebody I talked about yesterday that, hey, I wouldn't mind if Mike Williams signed with the Chiefs. We'll see what he gets on the open market. He's heading back to the Chargers. It's crazy how quickly people have Mike Williams in a Chargers uniform pictures out there. Like it was immediate. It's odd. Like even on the field, like catching passes from Justin Herbert.
AI is really changing.
Scary.
Digital graphics, all that stuff.
Scary. But a one-year deal worth up to $6 million for Mike Williams. I wonder what the incentives are and the guaranteed dollars, because he was a guy I wouldn't have minded to see the Chiefs go out and get. But there are going to be minor deals like that. Again, the guy I'd love to see on a minor deal to bring the Chiefs in would be Isaiah Simmons. By the way, Cooper Flagg leaving in a wheelchair right now. Tate an hour from now covering the Kansas Jayhawks. They've got Arizona tonight, an overtime win last night. Let's talk with our college basketball insider, Myron Metcalf from ESPN, presented by Youth Rise KC. When Myron comes on with us throughout this college basketball season, donations go to youthrisekc.com. You can go to that website and check out the annual gala coming up on April 6th, how you can get involved and attend that at the Uptown Theater. Again, youthrisekc.com. Myron, welcome into the show. Let's start with this. Cooper Flagg, the injury, looked like a severe ankle injury. Tried multiple times to put weight on that left ankle, couldn't. And then it looked like maybe being taken back to the x-ray room or another room, he needed a wheelchair that they took him back there. What'd you see with that? And I guess from a college basketball standpoint and a Duke standpoint and a fan standpoint of watching, what's the implications and the impact of this injury to Cooper Flagg?
I mean, it overtakes anything that happens on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
It may overtake anything that happens the rest of the conference tournaments. I mean, it's that big. It's early, right? It appears to be an ankle injury. As you know, ankle injuries are weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are guys I've seen do that, and they're out for a game, if that. Sometimes guys come back the next game, and then there are players who've had that stuff happen, and it's literally followed them for the entire season, right? So it's a major thing in terms of what happens next. Like, it's too early to know the implications because we don't know the severity. But certainly the Selection Sunday situation, where if this is possibly something that could complicate the number one overall seed, does this change how Duke is seeded potentially if he can't go? So this is significant news. I'm not going to call it Kenyon Martin because we don't know if we've reached that level. We don't know if he's going to miss time. But in terms of the timing, this is what happened 25 years ago with Kenyon Martin when Cincinnati was ready to get that number one seed. Hopefully Duke can avoid that fate and that they'll have Cooper Flagg going forward.
Well, and I'm guessing the wheelchair was to go back, and the first thing they typically do is let's take x-rays and let's eliminate that, and then we'll get the MRI and see how severe it is and things like that. So I'm assuming it's going back to that. So that would be the first step of seeing if Cooper Flagg and what his availability potentially could be if those things come back negative on the x-rays on that ankle. If that's good, great. Cleared that hurdle, and now let's see what the severity is. And I'm with you, like, it wouldn't surprise me if all of a sudden in the second half he's jogging out there. It's like, well, some guys can just morph and their bodies are different. And then, hey, in 2 weeks he might still be hobbled and then, steps in the wrong spot, and now all of a sudden it's back to square one. And now he's dealing in the Elite Eight or something like that with an ankle injury. That's back to what it was now. It's one of those things you just don't know with that. And I'm with you. I thought about Kenyon Martin when he first went down about, okay, how bad is this thing? If the x-rays come back and they're negative for Duke but positive for a fracture, then we are talking about a potential Kenyon Martin from the Selection Sunday crew and what the committee would do. I do wonder from that standpoint what they would do.
Yeah, we're a long way.
Absolutely. Yes.
To your point, I just got an update. He's doubtful to return. Okay. So that's what Duke is saying. That's a lot better than out, right?
Yeah.
And he had a situation like this, I think, last week or maybe 2 weeks ago where he got poked in the eye, and then, they looked at him, he came back and played. So the thing about this, and you said it, right, you can get the x-ray on an ankle injury and it will reveal nothing, right? It'll be a negative result. So everyone's like, oh, everything's good. And then you go back and get the MRI, and that can reveal other things, right? My guess is we won't see him play. I mean, if you're Duke, you don't care about losing this game as much as you worry about figuring out how to preserve your team and making sure Cooper's good. So I have a hard time believing, even if they're down, that we're going to see Cooper Flagg again today. But then, like you said, what does it mean potentially going forward if, in fact, this left ankle thing is a problem? And then you know this too, man. Ankle injuries can be great today. Like, we've seen guys play on adrenaline, in moments like this, right? And then a day later you find out that their ankles swelled up to the size of a basketball. So there's a lot they got to figure out at Duke, obviously, with the projected number one pick.
Yeah, I mean, and Patrick Mahomes played on, it was a high ankle sprain a couple of years ago when they beat Cincinnati in the AFC Championship, and he left the game against Jacksonville, which, by the way, he did not want to go back and get x-rays because he didn't want to know the answer to what the x-rays showed. He wanted to just keep playing football and figure it out later, and Andy said, you're not going back in the game until you get x-rays. Luckily, they were negative. But he talked about, like, he played the next week against Cincinnati. He played 2 weeks later against Philly and, tweaked it, re-injured it, and then he said he didn't feel the same. I think it was until like almost May that his ankle felt fully healed. That's a high ankle sprain. The ankle went a different way than what typically we've seen ankle sprains, so it's a little bit longer to recover from that. But to your point, like those things can linger for a while. Let me ask you from this, and again, the preface is we're a long way away from this, but just in the information we have now and what looks like he's probably done for the weekend playing in the ACC tournament. But what are the prospects for Duke? Let's say from a hobbled Cooper Flag and maybe a no Cooper Flag if they have to play a number of games in the tournament. Are they still a Final Four caliber team with the surrounding cast? Or is Cooper Flag not national championship caliber without Cooper Flag, but are they still number one seed, make a run in the tournament to maybe they play long enough that Cooper Flag is 100% healthy and can be out there to help them win and cut down the nets?
I mean, when you lose the guy who I think is going to win the Wooden Award, like there's no replacing that. Even though they have other guys, Con Knipple is going to be a top 10 pick. Malawach is going to be a lottery pick maybe. Malik Brown had a shoulder injury he re-aggravated.
Yeah,
but
he's been ruled as out for the rest of the game too.
Yeah, so you have already some challenges.
Yeah,
Proctor, you have other vets, but this isn't the same team without Cooper Flag. I mean, everything goes based on him. He's the catalyst. I think he's the best player in America. So there's no way to replace that.
Yeah.
So in terms of what Duke does going forward, do they have enough talent to win games and get into the tournament and be competitive in the early rounds? Sure. But I don't think they're a national championship team, according to anybody, without Cooper in there. So it certainly would change that.
Yeah.
But again, this is an ankle injury.
Early.
And the question is, okay, what does that mean? What is the severity of it? Like I always tell people with basketball players too, man, I watch guys go down and I assumed they torn an ACL or an Achilles, like they were done. Like just the pain. I've seen guys rolling on the floor in pain. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is the end of his season. And he literally comes back out 8 minutes later. And I've seen guys tweak a knee and they're out and you're like, oh, okay, they're on the sideline laughing, no big deal. And then the next day it's an ACL tear. They're out for the season. So you just don't know with this stuff. But without Cooper Flag, we're not talking about the same team at all.
Yeah. Last not this previous year, but in 2023 in the AFC Championship game against Baltimore for the Chiefs, Charles Omenihu tore his ACL in that game. But didn't know it was torn. And so after the game, he's talking on the field about Super Bowl. He's like, oh, I'm playing. I'm playing. This ain't going to stop me from playing. Like, we're going to go get tests on it, but I feel good about it. I'll be playing in a couple of weeks in the Super Bowl. And then, a couple of hours later, it's Amena who tore his ACL. Adrenaline, everything, like, oh, this ain't going to stop you. Actually, it is. Unfortunately, your body, you're not Boobie Miles. You're not going to go out there and try to play on the torn ACL, man. It's going to be worse for you if you do that. Myron Metcalf is our guest, and we'll certainly keep everybody up to date if there's any news coming in with that. Right now, it's 31-31, Georgia Tech and Duke in the first round, 17 minutes to go in that game. Iowa State and BYU playing a fun one at T-Mobile with the Big 12 tournament going on here in Kansas City. And obviously, we'll continue to keep you updated on that one. Iowa State up by 9, under 4 to go over BYU. Myron, I wanted to get your thoughts on, we've talked a lot about it around here today, the morning show, and then the first hour of the show here. We talked about the emotions from Coleman Hawkins last night after K-State loses. Jerome Tang talking about it as well. But Coleman Hawkins, the emotions pouring out of him, how upset he was and talking about what he wished he could have done this year in going back and just not paying attention to anything. It affected his play. He let that get to him. The NIL stuff, what people were saying online, the pressure that came with that, and it dismantled his season that he just felt like he didn't play his game because he was thinking about all of those other things. him and the emotions that came out of him, and we're talking about NIL and transfer portal. Is there a lesson there? Are there multiple lessons there? What do you take away, and what do you see when Hawkins is reacting like that after the game is over and thinking back to this year and a guy who was reported early on, this guy's getting $2 million, and that sort of changed the view of Coleman moving forward?
I think the players of this generation were excited to get the money. I don't believe they understood that they would be scrutinized like pros as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think that's the part that they weren't prepared for. And I blame all of us, honestly. Like, I think collectively, everybody around these athletes did not really prepare them for what was ahead. You know, it was like, wow, everybody's getting paid. Wow, $2 million. But then now all of a sudden there's a financial component attached to your performance that wasn't there before. So I do think Coleman Hawkins was honest about everything he's feeling. I do think online and social media just made everything worse for him to make that kind of money, and then for Kansas State to be what it is. He ain't the only player who got paid, by the way, and their team didn't do a whole lot. At the same time, he won't be offered the same sympathy as he would have been in the past generation.
Yeah.
You know, if he were just transferred without the money, I think there would be people say, "Oh man, that's heartfelt, right? This is a hard time for these guys." But when you get $2 million. I don't think there are a lot of people who are going to say that's too bad. And I wish it wasn't that way. I wish it wasn't that way for pros. But I do think that's the reality. When you accept that kind of money, you're coming in and saying, I can take this team to the tournament. That didn't happen with Kansas State, and that's not just on Coleman Hawkins. That's on other pieces as well. It starts with Jerome Tang, who I like a lot, but it starts at the top. So I think it stinks that we're at this point. But I also think that this is a part of it. And I think more athletes need to realize that this is a part of it. You're going to be treated like a pro because you're making money. And there's a lot more that comes with that than I think they realize.
Yeah, I've talked about it this year from a Chiefs perspective that, Juwan Taylor playing right tackle for the Chiefs, it's like, if he was making a couple million a year, it's like, okay, Juwan Taylor, fine right tackle. He's making $20 million per year. He sucks. All right, because it's a sliding scale of $20 million, not good enough. Penalty machine, holds, ridiculous. Undrafted free agent and performing the same way Juwan Taylor's performing, that's a hell of a find by Brett Veach, and that guy is way outperforming expectations. Those things, are taken into account, and that scale can slide. Also, I think the reporting of what Coleman Hawkins got the $2 million as well, I think, is part of it. Myron, I know you got to go now, so get out of here. You got news to break and everything with Cooper. So thank you for at least joining us for a little bit. Thank you, Myron.
No, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Myron Metcalf there. We were told before Myron came on that with the Cooper flag information.
I just got a text that said, got a bail.
Yeah, with the Cooper flag information that at any moment Myron would have to go to present that, whether that be on ESPN or absolutely
busy guy.
ESPN. But he's got to go do his other job. So we certainly appreciate Myron joining us.
Tomfoolery with you and me.
Yeah, we're not going to play grab ass talking about these this college. I'm certainly not going to ask or answer Jason who the fourth number 1 seed is. Heck no, I'm not going to tell him that. If that's coming up on the interview, nope, I'm out. I'm done. I don't even have to talk about Cooper Flag. I just want to leave. In fact, what that was the equivalent of a first date when you call your friend and say, hey, can you call me about 8:30? And I'll have to go outside and take the phone call, and then I'll know, like, okay, oh, I'm sorry, it's an emergency, I got to go. Or friend and everything, I let her know that I'm on a date. Okay, don't call back. It's ridiculous. So
or there's a plant in the restaurant already that is your buddy over like a couple tables down. All you got to do is just turn, look, then the phone call comes.
That's exactly right. I hope that's not what it was.
We'll find out if there's not any breaking news here in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah. But if you're just joining us or you haven't heard the news out of Charlotte, we don't know how badly Cooper Flag is injured or the latest, but it certainly changes what the weekend could be or people were hoping would be for Duke and what Sunday might be. By the way, Duke is now on a massive run and now up by 7 over Georgia Tech. They were trailing by 12. Now they're up by 7 with 15 minutes to go. So it looks like Duke is going to, even without Cooper Flagg, find a way to pull away from Georgia Tech, the number 8 seed, that early on was hitting everything, and Duke wasn't knocking down shots, and neither was Cooper Flagg. He was 1 of 6 from the floor with 2 points, and Duke was 0 for their first 12 from behind the arc. But Cooper Flagg lands on his left ankle, rolls it pretty severely. And we said it was parallel with the floor and, perpendicular with his leg. It wasn't like one of those to where you just roll it and then it pops right back. Like, rolled that. That thing rolled and stayed rolled, and he didn't put pressure on it after that. He was helped off the floor, and then he had a wheelchair back to the locker room or back to the to probably get x-rays, things like that. So Cooper Flagg, the latest update by a couple of people is that, let me see this from Brian Fisher saying that his return is doubtful. That's what Myron gave us the update there. Cooper Flagg is leaving the Duke locker room, walking out with his shoes on, no massive limp, not returning to the court, but is leaving the building.
So no Roethlisberger boot. That's pretty good sign.
Okay, now Brian Fisher is saying that Cooper Flagg just got retaped and is heading back to the bench.
Okay.
Big round of applause at Spectrum Center as Flagg emerged from the tunnel.
Oh, there we go.
Which is, it's funny because it's exactly what we were sort of talking about with Myron. I'm like, it looks terrible. And it's like, okay, this guy might be out for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Or he might play in the second half. We don't know with ankle injuries. It looked really bad, and the reaction looked really bad. I'm not saying he's going to play today. He might have just said, tape it up. Well, it's not broken. X-rays negative, whatever, and we don't have the injury with that. But I'm not going to – I need to go back out to the floor. But it's interesting. The first report there from Brian Fisher said he's leaving the building. It didn't say this is not returning to the court, but is leaving the building. Like, that's odd. Because then he's literally returning to the court. I don't know if he just worded that wrong while tweeting it out, because that's a massive difference between he's now back on the bench. So retaped ankle, things like that. So Nick Carboni that covers that works in Charlotte says Cooper Flagg came out of the locker room. Looks like he's trying to get loose and testing the ankle. Interesting. All right, so there you go. They have sewn his ankle back on because it was amputated at first. It was interesting that he was carrying his left ankle to the locker room with him, and now they have just re-sewn it. I'm telling you. It looks just like Cooper Flagg out there in the jersey. So AIs, this 3D printing is getting crazy. It's getting really crazy. All right, so thank you to Myron Metcalf for joining us for a little bit. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. On the other side, we will play that Coleman Hawkins sound. Jerome Tang, who talked with Todd Lebo after the game last night, and get back into that a little bit of what we were talking about. And then we'll hear from Matt Tate coming up at 1 o'clock, R1, S1, covering the Kansas Jayhawks. Mizzou in action tonight against a Mississippi State team that just simply dominated LSU. So we will, by the way, they're showing, now I can see actually Cooper Flagg walking back to the bench, and it is as ginger of a walk as a guy is going to have. Like, it's one of those to where the leg or the ankle and the foot is fully flat as it's stepping. There's no really pushing off or movement there, and he's gingerly walking back. So it's not like, hey, he's jogging out. It's not Paul Pierce. He didn't get the the wheelchair for other reasons and then running back out on the floor. So we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next. by the CW Farm and Ranch Venue, River Bluff Brewery, Church of the Resurrection, presenting the Sports Radio 810 Miller Lite Fan Fest. Halftime there at T-Mobile and a barn burner going on. Iowa State leading BYU 53-49. So I hope you had the over in the 146 since they're already sitting at over 100. So, and I think these two teams will probably combine for 40-some-odd points in the second half, the way that they have been shooting the ball and playing. A total of 23s have been made between the two. 10 of 17 for Iowa State, 10 of 21 for BYU. So 23s have been made. Look, friendly rims at T-Mobile, it seems like. A lot of threes being made there at T-Mobile, whether that's the background, the lighting. Seems to be a nice shooter's gym so far in this tournament. And a really fun one for the Iowa State fans and the BYU fans that might be there. But 53-49, Iowa State on top of BYU. Last night, Kansas State loses to Baylor. And the story of that is, one, the season being over for Kansas State. And I think we're in a time where the portal has changed whether or not teams will play other postseason tournaments, not named the NCAA tournament, because guys are probably thinking about what their next steps are of either staying or going. And so are they going to play a couple of more weeks? Guys with their NBA dreams and guys that are in the portal in other teams, on other teams, in other scenarios that, might make it less likely that teams do that. So K-State season ending last night. Coleman Hawkins' career over last night. We're going to play the entire audio here of him at his locker, jersey, uniform still on, and the emotions from Coleman Hawkins. Here that is last night, Todd Lebo and the assembled media talking to Coleman Hawkins.
How does it feel, I guess, now that your first season with Kansas State has come to an end?
I mean, I don't even know, man. My heart breaks for the team because these guys haven't experienced some of the things I've experienced. And, I really wanted to come in and impact the program. Man, I'm sorry for crying. It hurts, but I really wanted to come in and impact the program. And, some of the stuff, the outcome, obviously wasn't what we wanted, but, if someone asks me if I regret coming here, I tell them, I don't regret being my team, the coaching staff, the people I met, and my heart just breaks for them because, like I said, they just haven't experienced some of the things I experienced in my career. But, same thing for the fans, because I feel like I let a lot of people down. And I feel like I did a poor job of letting people talk about me and it affect my play. And it was evident all year, and I wish I could just go back and block out everything, not for myself, but for the team, so we could have had a more successful year. But, this is a learning lesson for me, and I wish the best for the future of this program.
What message would you have for these guys moving forward?
Stay away from social media and work as hard as you can and not worry about anything else besides what's going on in the locker room and on the court, and you'll have success.
I know you talked about the social media stuff when you guys were here in Kansas City before. Did you change anything after that? Were you able to kind of keep off of it a little bit?
No, I wish some of the time spent on social media I could have did something more. I didn't really have a lot of friends here. I just had my teammates. I feel like it was a lot easier for me because I had a lot of friends at Illinois. I knew everyone. I did a lot more, but if I could go back, man, I'd definitely do some things differently. And I don't know, man. It's just hard when you have expectations and you don't meet them. It just feels like everything falls back on you. It feels like there's just a spotlight on you, and maybe that's just me painting a picture in my head, but it's just hard, man, for real.
For a team basically, full of transfers, for you to, feel this emotional about your teammates. Everybody talks about how hard it is for them to connect, but, it seems like this group is more connected than anything if you're feeling like this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, although we may not kick it 24/7, I feel like we still wanted to win for each other, and I feel like at times we just didn't play to the best of our abilities, and that was the sacrifice we all made. And coming here to K-State, we kind of got thrown in the mix, and not everybody played to their strengths, but we still played as a team, and we wanted to win for each other. So,
what was the message from Coach after the game for you guys?
Man, he just said it was the hardest. This is the hardest part about being a coach, and moving forward, he's gonna let guys' emotions boil down and make some grown man decisions from there. And he promised that, moving forward, he's gonna win a national championship, and he knows that this is the right place to be. So, yeah.
And probably some postseason for you guys. You talked yesterday about playing hurt and coming and answering the bell. You still want to keep playing here in the postseason with the Cats if they make it?
You said what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, get into the postseason. I know the transfer portal will open for some of these guys with some of these weird windows. This be an odd postseason, but you want to keep fighting with these guys, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I wish the outcome could have been different, but it's not, and I wish we could play 2 more games together. And yeah, man, I just wish the outcome was different.
Coleman, do you feel like a lot of things culminated into the performance tonight over the course of the season, where you just weren't able to just try to get back in the game as much as you tried to fight hard?
I feel like we just didn't see the ball go in early, and we didn't get stops. And I feel like our stops and seeing the ball go in motivates us a lot. I think that's what's won its games a lot. I feel like we just let our defense affect offense and offense affect defense in both ways. And I feel like they just play a little bit harder than us and executed better than us.
Oh, maybe this is a hard question to answer, but in hindsight, do you think if there would have been no publicity about your NIL deal, things might have been easier for you?
For sure. For sure. 100%.
Wish maybe you guys would have kept that more quiet in hindsight?
I don't blame me. I don't blame anyone in this program. If anything, I feel like I won't even answer that. It's whatever. It's all good.
What do you think your best memory will be of playing in purple and lavender?
Probably beating Kansas at home. I feel like we were, at that time, a very connected group. I feel like we were winning basketball games. So I think that little stretch, that 5-game stretch, and then beating Kansas at home would always stick with me.
Hey, thanks for all the interviews this year. Keep your head up. You're a stand-up guy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, there's Coleman Hawkins, and I think this is going to be a hotly debated topic because there are a group of people that will hear that, look at that, and just simply won't care. Like, you made $2 million, man. Boo-hoo. Cry on somebody else's shoulders. If you didn't want to feel the pressure, you shouldn't have taken the money. And I do get that in a world that $2 million is a massive, massive difference for a lot of us out there. That would make a huge difference in our lives. And he was able to play 1 year of basketball and make $2 million and the pressure that comes along with that. I think this shows a couple of things. First of all, that even the NIL guys and the transfer portal guys that even 1 year in can have a passion and a love for that particular university, that school, the coaching staff, the players, because I think those are real emotions of not getting the job done. And I think it's also the real emotions of the culmination of his career. It's over. It's done. 4 years at Illinois, 1 year at Kansas State. no matter how much of the money he made in NIL, not getting back to the NCAA tournament this year, and probably feeling like he's a big reason why they didn't get back to the NCAA tournament this year. Coming to Kansas State thinking he was going to be the centerpiece, the straw that stirs the drink, and he was going to be the reason why this team would perform better and have more success than they had last year. And he came up short, and he heard about it. And there is no question that Coleman Hawkins would have been treated differently if we didn't know he was making $2 million. I don't think there's any question about that. Because what I don't hear is a money and a monetary value placed next to A.J. Storr's name when people are frustrated with how he's playing. They're not saying, dude, the guy scored 2 points and he's making 1.5. And I'm just, that's a number I'm just throwing out there, right? We know what Coleman Hawkins is making. Not saying it should or shouldn't be released. It is released. But you also have to understand that when you're going to agree to that money, there is a chance that that thing becomes public and you will be viewed differently. You'll be viewed on a more harsher scale, on a greater scale of less empathy and more expectation of, wow, this is what you're making. Like NFL, all the money is public. Like we know what they're making, guaranteed dollars. We know what the cash is this year. I mean,
it ain't gonna get any better.
Yeah,
I mean, to ask Russell Westbrook what it's like to go to Utah.
Well,
it ain't fun. I mean, and they're younger. Like that, he's 23 years old, and like where I really understand his emotion is the fact where he probably came in here and, like you said, it's not a mercenary situation. It feels like he really wanted to play well and take this team as far as he could take them because he liked the guys around him. He liked Jerome Tang, and he picked the school for that reason. It's just you're right. Some people are going to hear that and think, well, you have $2 million. Who cares? It's like, you know that professional sports teams have sports psychologists. And like you said earlier, Mahomes is a $500 million, the by far and away best player in the NFL, and he still goes to social media, and he's still petty Pat, and he's still, counting to 10. And that's also how they're wired.
Yeah. I mean, after the game was over, he's sitting at his locker.
Trayvon Diggs is outside of the locker room in his full uniform with his phone in hand, talking bleep to some reporter that had tweeted something during the game.
Yeah, tweeted something out on a play where he's running down the field and didn't think that the reporter didn't think he gave enough effort. And Diggs' point was, no, I'm stalking and running over here for the cutback. This is how I'm playing pursuit angle defense when I have teammates up there that are ahead of the play. I'm here in case he cuts back, and it looks like I'm not trying to get in the play.
And he had another point, too. He actually had that point for, I think it was Todd Archer as well.
He did have that point. That was a really good point that he made to that reporter. They eventually got together, talked it out, and everything like that. But like we talk about Juwan Taylor, I mentioned that with Myron Metcalf. And by the way, Trey Smith. Trey Smith is a lovable character. All right? I want Trey Smith on my football team. I want Trey Smith on my team, like whatever that team might be. If it's in business, like whatever. But even if it's like in business, like he seems like a great dude to be around, a fun dude to be around. And obviously what happened at the parade and him stepping into action quickly, like that's awesome. And because he's a sixth rounder, when there's a hold or a penalty or there's a missed block that results in a sack, or a pressure, or a missed block that then the running play is stopped, there's a little bit of a grace that's given to Trey Smith that's not given to Juwan Taylor. Juwan Taylor gets no grace in this town because he came over with high expectations of a big ticket, of big money. And that's where you wonder about Trey Smith this year. If Trey Smith is going to sign if Trey Smith doesn't agree to a deal with the Chiefs and says, no, we didn't come to a long-term extension because I wanted more money than the Chiefs were willing to give me. They traded Joe Thuney and said, we're going to invest in you long-term, but it's not good enough for me. I'm going to play with the $23.4 million this year, and then I'm going to do the same thing next year. Or if he signs and he's making $22 million per year and is the highest paid guard, understand the grace gets limited at that point. The sliding scale of, oh, well, you missed the block there. He's no longer the sixth round great story. He's the highest paid guard in the league, so go perform like it. The problem is he's not the best guard in the league. He's just going to be the highest paid guard in the league. There's a difference with that. And Coleman Hawkins was a good player at Illinois. And this is where you get into whether it's chasing happiness or something like that. Jerome Tang in last offseason, and Arkansas is recruiting Jerome Tang. Or Jerome Tang, maybe he's going to Arkansas, maybe he's not. If you go to Arkansas, they don't care about what you did at Kansas State. Yeah, cool, you were good at Kansas State. That's why you got the job here. But I have no emotional investment for the Elite Eight run that you made 2 years ago at Kansas State. There is no equity that you have built with me. That is zero. You have to then rebuild that equity. You eliminate that. You give that up when you go somewhere else. But you get a bigger bag. You get a better paycheck. Coleman Hawkins was beloved at Illinois. 4-year starter, stayed 4 years, 4-year player, stayed 4 years with Brad Underwood, made the tournament every year. Was a really solid player. And had he stayed at Illinois, then maybe it's different. Maybe the lesson for him is Illinois offered me this much. K-State offered me this much. I took the most money, went to K-State, wanted to be more of a focal point of an offense of a team, and it didn't work out. Where, I don't know, how am I being viewed in Champaign right now if I stayed and I'm playing 5 years and I'm viewed as one of the all-timers at Illinois? Who knows? Less money, and I don't know the situation that was going on. Maybe Brad Underwood told him, hey, maybe it's best for you to go look somewhere else. I have no idea what the point was there. But he did mention in that quote, in that clip, about going from Illinois when you know everybody. You've got essentially that support system that's built in already over 4 years of building relationships with people. Then you go to Kansas State, you don't know anybody. And the Kansas State fans don't care about what you did at Illinois. There's no emotional investment to your play in Big Ten tournaments, to your play in the NCAA tournament to get you to the next round. Nobody at Kansas State, the Wildcat fans, remember a shot that you made at Illinois that you were emotionally invested in, and you're jumping up and down and screaming and hugging your other Illinois fans and family. That's eliminated once you go there because it's from a mercenary standpoint.
What have you done for me lately?
Right. What have you done for me next? You know, you've done nothing for me lately because you're not Marcus Noel. You're not Jacob Pullen. You're not that guy that I've got an emotional investment with that the Illinois fans might have, that K-State fans have with a Jacob Pullen or something like that.
And what were they making? You know,
right?
They dedicated their whole being to the Kansas State program. I mean, obviously Coleman Hawkins did, but they dedicated 4 years.
Yes, right. Their entire career there, and so you maybe part of the lesson is a better understanding of what you're signing up for, a better understanding that there's a chance that can become public. And I don't think anybody from Kansas, I'd love to know how it got out there. The money, it's out there, so nothing you can do about it now. It didn't come from him. I don't think it came from Kansas State. My guess is it came from a school that was also recruiting him and wanted people to know with their sources and people that they can release information to that, well, we didn't miss out on Coleman Hawkins because he didn't want to come to our school, because we weren't good recruiters, because he didn't think that we were going to incorporate him in the team. We lost out on him because they paid him $2 million. And we ain't paying that
we're
much.
heaping pressure on him while we're doing this as well, because we're putting it out there. Yeah, that's the thing is, like, this really needs a CBA or a collective that oversees it, because one kid's earnings shouldn't be getting out, and then everyone else's it should be either everyone's is out there or no one's is out there.
Yeah.
So we can't pick and choose who gets scrutinized with a actual dollar amount next to it.
And I think if you're signing an NIL deal, I think you should sign it under the assumption that it may get out there.
Yep.
Assumption. You know what? I'm going to assume this gets out there. If it doesn't, hey, great. Nobody knows what I'm making as an NIL deal. And like I said, what would the conversation around A.J. Storr be? Or Ryland Griffin?
Right.
You know, any other player. I'm just talking about those are local players.
No,
so,
I know what you mean.
And they were
any kid
big-time recruits, big-time transfers that everybody
too.
wanted them. Yes, everybody wanted them, and they ended up in Lawrence. And it's like, okay, so, what did it take to land that particular player? Mark Mitchell, what did it take to land him from Duke?
Until Will Howard went on that run, he was always going to be a guy that lost to Michigan if he didn't win that national championship.
That's right, yeah, because nobody cared about what Will Howard did at Kansas State to win a Big 12.
Yep.
To win the Big 12 championship game, to do some of those things, to fill in, to step up, to help get them to Avery Johnson. Like, okay, this guy was really good and played much better than we thought. From this quarterback to Skyler to then getting to the next one in Avery, and Will Howard filled in admirably, and we won these games and got to the Big 12 and championship and all of that stuff. You get to Ohio State, it's like, okay, cool. Great. I don't care. That's why you're here.
Especially Ohio State at that level.
Yeah, cool. That's what you did. If you didn't do that, you wouldn't be here. So
that's like Zeke Mayo.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like, hey, it was sweet what you did over there, but this is not only Kansas, but it is a lot more pressure.
Right. That's the reason you're here is because you did that. But you've cashed in that equity to be here.
Yes.
You cashed in all of that.
That's part of the reason why you should kind of lay off Coleman Hawkins too, is he's earned the $2 million from previous play. It's also paying for the future, but
people will say, well, he didn't earn $2 million, but you're worth what somebody's willing to pay you.
Yep.
So Kansas State said he was worth $2 million.
Desperate team sets the market. That's why you watched all these free agency and Carolina Panthers were spending the most money, but does anyone actually believe they'll be any good next year?
Milton Williams worth $28 million a year? I mean, considering what Chris Jones is making?
Yep. No, I mean,
Dan Moore worth $22 million per year? Considering Ronnie Stanley got 20, Like, yeah, the teams have money to spend and limited resources or limited availability. There's a premium on the product and a lot of money to spend, so you're going to overprice because you want to outbid other people. And again, talked about it with Kent Swanson, that I would have loved to have Ronnie Stanley. The Chiefs were going to make a run at Ronnie Stanley, but we find out now they weren't going to get him because the Patriots were willing to pay $24 million per year. We know that now. Albert Breer putting that out there. Patriots were going to go as high as 24, maybe even more. The Chiefs were going to offer 20. He stayed with the Ravens at 20. Chiefs weren't going to get to 24 and 25. He ain't Trent Williams. They weren't going to get in a bidding war like they did with the 49ers to get Trent Williams. They weren't going to do that with Ronnie Stanley. So they weren't going to land Ronnie Stanley. We know that now. And he wasn't going to leave because he could have got 24 from the Patriots. And let's be honest, Ronnie Stanley knew that the Patriots would offer 24. But legal tampering started on Monday. Yes, and I wasn't born on Monday. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Dylan Michaels. Heading up until 2 o'clock, we will talk with Matt Tate at the top of the 1 o'clock hour. Trying to find the record for points scored in a game in the Big 12 tournament. And I'm still searching. I'll find it eventually one day. I don't know. And I bring that up because right now for Iowa State, they are leading BYU 72-69. And Curtis Jones for Iowa State has 27 with 11 and a half minutes to go. He's 7 of 11 from behind the arc, 10 of 15 from the floor. So 27 points for Curtis Jones. He had 24 against Curtis Jones, the one that went off against Kansas State in Manhattan and dropped 24 points as I'm looking at the game log right now. I remember he had thank you, Curtis Seabolt, who is the man. I just knew it off the top of his head. Big 12 record for points scored in a single game is 43 by Mike Singletary of Texas Tech. Cannot win with him. Can't play with him. Can't coach with him. Can't do it.
Bears legend.
Can Curtis Jones break his record? Can do it. Curtis says at one point he scored 29 straight points.
Can't do it.
I don't think he can either. Can Curtis Jones score 29 straight points?
Can't do it.
Can he break Mike Singletary's single-game scoring record in the Big 12 tournament of 43 points?
Can't do it.
Nope. But he's got 27, though. He's playing phenomenal basketball, and a big reason why Iowa State is leading BYU 72-69. What a game to be at. What a fun game to be at.
Andy Reid's in attendance.
Oh, is he?
He is.
Is he rooting for Iowa State or BYU?
I don't think so.
Is Kingsley there?
Yeah.
Is Zach Wilson there? 25 threes have been made in this game. Iowa State is 11 of 20, and BYU is 14 of 28. The two teams are combined to shoot 52% from three-pointers.
It's before the half or after?
No, there's 11 minutes to go. It's 25 of 48 from behind the arc,
Good
Iowa
Lord.
State and BYU.
I'd say usually halftime will cool them off, but it doesn't seem like that's the case.
52% from behind the arc the two teams have combined. A fun one there. We'll talk with Matt Tate. We'll see what tonight's game looks like with K-State and Arizona. Jayhawks, they are in action tonight. Our coverage starting at 7 o'clock right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB with some pregame and an 8:30 tip-off tonight against Arizona. But let's look back to last night. We've talked about it throughout the show. Joining us now from R1S1, Matt Tate, who does a great job covering the Kansas Jayhawks and has done that for a while. Matt, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you. How you been?
I'm doing just fine. Did you also have dinner at 12:30 a.m. last night, like Bill Self and the team did apparently?
Yeah, like third dinner, I think it was for me. I don't have to be a prime of my life college athlete, so I get to eat as many dinners as I want.
No, that makes total sense, man. It does go into overtime. Let's start with just before we get in maybe some particulars and hone in on some things, but your takeaway, and maybe this will start to hone in on some things. But your takeaway from last night's win against UCF in overtime.
Well, it was sort of a microcosm of the whole season, man. I mean, like they had those guys down 13 at one point and feeling good. They came out of the gate with a beautiful 8-0 start by Zeke himself. I mean, there were a lot of moments in that game where it looked like, well, Kansas is definitely the better team. And then the longer you play over those 40 minutes, the more they start to slip and leave cracks for the other team, and the other team takes advantage. And that's been Kansas basketball this season. They've had a hard time putting teams away. They've had a hard time guarding the arc. UCF made 14 last night, and I wrote in my recap that it wasn't just 14, which is a big number. That's obviously not a number you want to give up to anybody. But the 14 and even quite a few of the ones they missed were pretty open looks. Mm-hmm. And so it's one thing if a guy makes a shot over you with the hand in his face, you contested it well. You kind of shake your head, do the Michael Jordan shrug thing, and say, good shot. But man, when you're giving up open look after open look after open look, it's part of the reason Bill Self spent most of the season with two hands on his head, and part of the reason they've had such a tough time this year. So to me, that was the biggest takeaway. They did get it done. You at the end of the day, winning is all that matters, and you got to tip your cap to them for finding a way to do it. But I definitely think that they could have been much more comfortable in the way they did it, and the fact that it wasn't comfortable probably put quite a few people on edge. So, in addition to that, you got to play the extra 5 minutes late into the night and expend a little more energy than you would have if you did put them away, and now you go play Arizona that didn't have to move a muscle yesterday. So all of that rolled into one makes for maybe a B- kind of day. Win is a win, and that's all that matters. But it certainly could have been better, prettier, easier, and they didn't take full advantage of that.
Visiting with Matt Tate, R1S1, one of the things that I think has been interesting this year is it's uncharacteristic for a team like Bill Self typically has, and a number of guys that have been in this program a while. I mean, even Hunter Dickinson, it's only 2 years, but in today's day and age, it feels like, it's 4 or 5 years that he's – maybe it's the NIL version of Perry Ellis is Hunter Dickinson. It just doesn't happen very often with a guy staying a couple of years and getting paid and things like that. But this team this year, the late game situations have been head scratching and puzzling, and some of it with those veteran guys, DeJuan Harris and Hunter Dickinson with the miscommunication, a couple of weeks ago in a loss at home. You have, in that Texas Tech game where you don't get a shot off, right? You don't get a shot off last night at the end of regulation, and Bill Self said, well, that wasn't the play, but we didn't execute it. And that's surprising when 3 of the 5 guys on the floor are guys that have been around the program. Why do you think that is this year? And obviously, if there was an answer to it, Bill Self would have it. I'm pretty positive out of all of us, that man and his coaches would have figured it out by now. But it is, when you say microcosm of the season, I agree with you, and we talked about that in the first hour of the show, that it sort of feels like that. But it seems out of the ordinary because this team has struggled and made some frustrating plays and turnovers in these late game situations, which could have resulted in wins. They resulted in losses. Last night it resulted in overtime, and they ultimately get the win.
Yeah, I think Self does have the answer, and unfortunately it's not an answer anyone likes. I mean, I think, these guys never in their careers have they been put in a position where they're the closer, right? DeJuan's always been a really good point guard and a nice role player, a setup man, a guy who can make the thing go, but he's not a closer. KJ Adams has been a terrific energy hustle role player kind of guy, but but not a go-to guy, not a closer. Hunter Dickinson, same thing. You know, Hunter Dickinson's definitely a go-to guy because, especially for Bill Self, who loves to throw the ball in there and will forever love to throw the ball in there.
And that was the plan, was to get him the ball.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But by nature of his position, right, he can't go out, get the ball at the midcourt circle, and then go get his shot. I mean, I'm sure on some playground somewhere he would love to do that, but that's not how it works at the major Division I college level. So I think, you know, it sounds like excuses. I realize that, but I think that's just the reality. It's like so much of their struggle is that these guys are still, I don't want to say out of position in terms of, you know, the 1 through the 5. They're not out of position there, but they are out of position in terms of their role. And this is where, you know, having a guy like Frank Mason, Devontae Graham, Darren Peterson next year, even Jalen Wilson recently, like just that one dude who's like, I got it. Not only a guy that can go get his own shot and all of that, but a guy who, even if the shot's not there for him, has enough moxie and confidence and just scrap to him to say, we'll find a way to make the play one way or the other. And, you know, again, that's not a knock on these guys. I think they are who they are. And you know, they've been miscast a little bit and trying to play roles that just aren't them naturally. And so when you combine that with the fact that half of the guys they're playing with are guys they've been playing with for 7 months or 8 months, right? Like, there's just not time. There's just not time to build that kind of automatic, I know you're going to zig when you're going to zig, and you know I'm going to zag when I'm going to zag because we've been together for 4 years. I mean, KJ and DeJuan should have that. There's no question. But, again, that's where those roles come into play. But as far as how A.J. Storr, Rylan Griffin, or Dickie Coit, or even Zeke fit into that, it's still, you know, it's the world we live in now. It's the way these teams are constructed, and some teams have a better time with it than others. And, you know, a team that has that kind of work out in their favor one year may struggle with it the next year. You know, it's just so inconsistent. So I think when you combine those two things, yeah, it's March, and this stuff should have been coached up by now, and it should be automatic and all that. But any of us that say that kind of thing, yeah, Bill Self's a Hall of Famer and you know, one of the best to ever do it, but he carries a clipboard. He doesn't have a magic wand. And so I think the fact that, you know, it's still – you can only coach them so much. You can only tell them so many times. They still have to be comfortable in their execution. And obviously this team doesn't quite have that down to where it's second nature. And so you're going to see struggles. And we've seen them all year. We saw them last night. And obviously the goal from this point on for these guys is to minimize those as much as they can. But, man, 1 or 2 bad possessions, whether it's late or even mid-second half, I mean, just, you know, you looked at that game. UCF was, 19-2 run at one point, 14-0. I mean, KU was up 13, and the next thing you know, that 13-point lead's down to 5, and timeout. And then the next thing you know, bam, back-to-back threes after back-to-back bad KU possessions, and now you're down 1, like in almost the literal blink of an eye. So there's definitely something missing there because there's so many Bill Self teams that, you know, from the past would have had no problem closing out a team when they're up 13 in the second half. But this team obviously continues to struggle with that and continues to have problems. The good news for them, and if you're a Kansas fan that wants that sort of glass half full approach, well, you know, give them credit and be happy they're able to get up 13 because if they weren't able to do that, they'd lose by double digits.
Yeah.
So it's a wild combination, sort of like a chemistry experiment. You know, you start pouring things together and you just hope this thing when you pour it in at this time isn't the one that blows up smoke in your face. And they've had that happen, but they also have the opportunity or the potential, I guess, to mix those chemicals, and when they mix just right, you know, they invented the cure for cancer. So I mean, it's a wild team with the disparity between how high their high is and how low their low is.
Well, and I think also the roster construction too. I mean, it's been a theme this year that people have talked about. Okay, is it do you go with Coit? Do you go with Griffin? Do you go with A.J. Storr when Zeke Mayo was struggling? Like, what happens there? And And I think just like the guys on the floor, like KJ's going to give you everything he has, but he's not going to be a guy that can go get you a basket when you need it. Hunter Dickinson is a go-to guy and has been playing phenomenal basketball over the last month, but he's oftentimes a defensive liability. I mean, DeJuan Harris is a guy that, great on defense and point guard, but also is not a guy that can knock down a shot in the course of the offense, and he hasn't been shooting the ball like he did last year. And then you got a couple of shooters and scorers that don't really look like they want to play all that much defense. It's like, can you get a game, as you're talking about, to where you can get the scoring from the guys that maybe are defensive liabilities, and on certain nights, hey, the defense is working, or on a night where the defense is working, can you get some points from somebody that you're not really expecting, and can you put it all together that way? And it's almost like, look, the KU success working against itself from, Bill Self and what he's built at Kansas, that what a Final Four, a national championship team looks like. I'll compare it to the Chiefs. Like, if Chiefs fans go through the season, even last year, not this past year, but I would say the 2023 season when the Chiefs were struggling, and it's like, this team is toast. They went and won a Super Bowl, but throughout the year, you're like, this doesn't look like a Super Bowl team, because we know what Super Bowl teams look like now, as opposed to like the mid-2000s. You're like, hey, this team might be able to do something in the playoffs. No, they won't. Right. Now we know what that looks like, and KU fans and those that cover the team know what a KU Final Four national championship team looks like. And even if you don't have that one go-to guy, which you brought up there I thought was really interesting, would have that grit to go and find it. You may not have like this guy's going to go and get you a bucket every time, but Ochai may find a way to get it. Like, he may not be the one you give the ball to, a give and go. Give it to him and go away. It's not that. Christian Brown's going to, find a way to get it done, and we've seen that throughout the time. And Malik Newman, even in 2018, just all of a sudden turning it on and becoming this go-to guy that can drop 30 in a night and say he's the bucket getter. Like, you don't really see that on this team, and I think that's where the success of the past sort of works against itself, because it's like KU's a tournament team. And that's not typically something we just talk about, because this is where the conversation ends on KU. What are they? Well, they're a tournament team. Are they a Final Four national championship team like years past? No, but they're a tournament team. And there are tons of teams across the country that are just simply tournament teams, and this is kind of what it looks like.
Right. Yeah, that's perfectly said, man. The Chiefs analogy especially. And look, last night, they got 19 from AJ Storr, which is sort of a like the tooth fairy flew in and dropped some special treat for you. Like, nobody saw that coming. I mean, I guess Self said after the game that he heard from somebody on the staff or something that they felt good about AJ that night. So good for them. They kind of called that. He didn't say who it was, but still, man, anybody that says they saw 19 coming from him is crazy. And to think, right, if he scored his normal 4 points or whatever, they would have not even close to been in that game. So it's a really interesting locker room right now because of what you just talked about. Like, DeJuan and KJ played in a Final Four. Zeke grew up watching Final Four teams and understanding what this culture is all about. They know, and you're in the locker room or you're talking to them at pressers, and man, you almost hear it like it's almost like swimming upstream. You hear them talking about, yeah, man, I think that's going to be big for AJ. He's going to build on that, and maybe it's going to be the start of his March run. And it's not just answering a question. It's like they're trying to talk themselves into believing that. And I do think these guys believe in each other and believe in themselves and believe that really big things are possible still for this team. But the way it feels when they're talking about it just feels a little bit like they're trying to convince themselves that these words are true. And nothing does that more than going out and putting it up and backing it up on the floor when it's money time, right? And so you have to tip your cap to AJ Storr for doing that last night. They've been talking about it. They've been wanting to see him come through, and he did. So, gold star for him last night. But my question with this team and so many really of these individual players is we have really yet to see them put games together, stack games. They played really, really well on Saturday against Arizona. Everybody thought, how perfect was that game? Senior day, they all scored, they all contributed. It was what they've been looking for. And then last night, kind of a dud. I mean, Self was really upset with the energy they showed up with, right? And and there's a million reasons for that. They're all excuses too, but there are a million reasons for that. But still, you'd like to think that at Kansas in the middle of March, you're not going to have to show up to a do-or-die type of game and hope your team has good energy. That has always been automatic. And so whether it's energy, belief, getting a guy going, somebody fighting through a slump, whatever it is, these guys continue to talk the talk, and they say, all the things you want to hear. They believe. But, it does sound like they're trying to force it a little bit. And I guess they have no choice, right? Like it's not like they could sit around in the locker room and say, "Well, we're probably not going to do much." I mean that doesn't make a good soundbite anywhere. Nobody would want to hear that. So obviously they have to say it and they have to believe it. But you wonder how much of that is real and how much of that is talk, and how likely are the chances of this team putting together 2, 3, 4 good games in a row. We haven't seen it all Big 12. We haven't seen it most of the season after their good start. So, you have to question that, and you have to wonder. And until we see it, I don't know that anybody can say it's coming. But it certainly does make sense to me for the people who believe the pieces are there.
Yeah.
If it just comes together, this could be cool. But the big if there is if it comes together, right? And will it, won't it? We'll see. I mean, it's money time now, so we will see if they find something that they haven't found most of the year. But, again, last night, nobody's going to apologize for winning a game in March. And I don't think they walked out of there feeling amazing, but I also know they walked out of there feeling a hell of a lot better than UCF did.
Yeah.
So something to be said for that.
Yeah, they walked out there feeling better than the opposite of them losing that game and going, well, you may only have one game left this season.
Right.
Right. And we'll find out. Matt Tate is our guest. How important do you think tonight's game is against Arizona? And some people will look at it from, the NCAA tournament seeding, and that really doesn't matter to me, tonight's game. I'm looking at it, Matt, as the last time, KU won 2 games in the same week was January 8th on Wednesday and January 11th on Saturday, because they lost Wednesday, won Saturday. Won Wednesday, lost Saturday. Won Tuesday, lost Saturday. Won Monday, lost Saturday. Won Tuesday, lost Saturday. Lost Tuesday, won Saturday. Won Monday, lost Saturday. Won Monday, lost Saturday. Won last night. Like, it feels like this team, as you talk, like, can they stack games together?
Right.
And so from that standpoint, what do you think the importance is of tonight's game? I mean, if we talk about a win, but maybe just going out there and playing good basketball, that, hey, a good team, Arizona team is also a tournament team. You're going up against a team that had a bye. You played great basketball. You just lost by a shot here or there. Love scores 40, and what are you going to do? Nobody could guard him that night. Maybe not even from a win standpoint, which would be nice, but a going out and performing well and playing good basketball and sort of trying to stack those games.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important for that. And that's kind of clicking lately, right? Like, even Texas Tech lost, even going down to Houston and losing, they played pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't say turnovers like they had at Houston, 20 turnovers. You can't say that's a team playing great, but competed. Let's say that, right? And they were in the game with one of the best teams in the country on their home floor. So there has been a little bit of that tide turning where it's like, okay, maybe we found our pride, maybe we found our edge, maybe we get it now. And that's been there lately in wins and losses. But I think tonight is massive because they just freaking played Arizona. So how huge was that when they beat them at home and everything was good and everybody's smiling and all the hugs and senior day feels and all that stuff? Like, Hunter Dickinson said it, KJ said it after that game on Saturday. We needed that. And now, not even a week later, you play the same team, and you can beat them, and you know what it takes. And if you don't, man, I worry for them that a loss tonight would erase all of the goodwill that they got out of Saturday. And then they're right back to square one where they're like, who the hell are we? Where are we going? And the worst place to be. So I don't know that, that they need to, like, treat this like a national championship, you don't win, your season's over kind of game. I don't think Self's ever really looked at this tournament that way. He's always said they used to only play the 3 days in a row because they were always picking one seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, he always said, like, if you win the first two, you might as well freaking win the last one, right? Like, why not? Go ahead and go get it, But tonight, I think that's a theory that into tonight, because I think they win this game. I think if they need to play their guys big minutes, they need to play their guys big minutes, and if that means the Flory minutes are limited or the AJ Storr minutes are limited because he comes out thinking he's going to go get 19 again and 5 shots in a row or something, then you don't play those. You ride it. Who were the kids that delivered that win over Arizona? Because I think it's a mental thing now. I think it's fragile. I think the mental state is so important at this time of year, and if they lose tonight, then it's like a wash. Saturday almost ever, and I don't think they can afford that. I think they need to feel good about Saturday, because that helps them feel good about the Houston game before that and the Texas Tech game before that. And I think a win tonight would help them feel good about last night. So it's not the one in next week where they're playing in Denver or Milwaukee or Cleveland or wherever they're
Then it is
headed.
a must win. Then that's the true definition of must win.
That's the one.
Yeah. So
That far yet, but I think from a mental standpoint for this team and all of its warts, I think we're as close to that as we can be, and I think it's a game of equal teams. I think Arizona's good. I think U's good. I don't think either one's great. I think usually when you play a team like that twice, you end up splitting. So I'm not saying they're going to lose by any means. I think they can win, and I think they should win. But after how far they had to push themselves last night to get through that, I'm definitely very curious to see how much they have left in the tank tonight. And then you're in that sort of if they can find a way to win tonight, even if it's ugly, then they're sort of in that position of, well, now we're just cruising, man. Like, if we lose in the semis of the Big 12 tournament to a team like Texas Tech, oh well, like, that's not going to hurt us, especially if we play well. Or if you get by that one and you lose to Houston in the title game, okay, we get to the freaking title game as the 6th seed. Like, there's some real good things that naturally come after this. But again, the mental part of that, and then just kind of playing with house money if you get through tonight, those are two huge things on the line tonight, and I think you'll see KU respond. I think they understand that. I think they will treat it that way, and I think you'll see a much more energetic, spirited team from the jump than you saw last night.
Matt Tate is our guest. Last one for you. How difficult do you think the task is tonight? Because I'm with you. These equal teams, and they just knock off Arizona on senior night, whether Arizona's out for revenge or just, hey, let's go get wins, and get ready for the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's one of those to where Arizona's been stewing since Saturday night. Like, you understand what you were walking into anyway. But, like, from the task and how difficult it will be tonight for Kansas to go and get a win, you're going up against a peer that has really good players and plays really good basketball and is really well coached. And as you mentioned earlier, was sitting at home, watching, or in the arena, just simply watching that game where KU was playing an overtime game. And we saw Keyshawn Hall, who played 36 minutes on Tuesday night, cramp up late in the game against KU last night. And he ended up playing, I think, 40 minutes last night. KJ Adams leaves it all on the floor more than anybody that I can remember at KU. And that defensive possession he had against Keyshawn Hall late was just beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful. It was teach tape. You know what I mean? Like they say in football, It was teach tape for playing defense against a really good scorer in Hall. And then even later on when Hall had the fadeaway, missed 3. Like there was a lot of things that went in late there. The task for this KU team to come back from last night, leaving it all out there, playing overtime, 40 minutes, 37, 39 minutes guys played, to then tonight against a rested Arizona team that's right there on your level. How difficult will that be for KU tonight?
It's big time tough because Arizona's good and because KU had Arizona down, 10-12, something like that at the Fieldhouse and gave up that lead. and still found a way to win. But they know that against these guys, just like last week, no lead is safe, right? Like they have a hard time protecting these types of leads that they find themselves getting, and so that makes it hard. Arizona's not going to let Zeke Mayo go off. I guarantee it. They saw him hit him for 5 threes the other day. They're going to guard him differently. Nobody's told me that, but I know that, right? Like, they're going to give him no space. They're going to be athletic and physical and make him work for everything he gets. And if he shoots a bunch of 2s in the lane, great. That's not 3. So I think those little things that Arizona can apply from sort of the lessons they learned on Saturday certainly make this a much, much tougher challenge than getting them at home for the first time all year. And then you throw in the fatigue factor and all that. It's a monster game, but I would say this too, like, you'd way rather be playing Arizona tonight than Houston, than Texas Tech, than BYU probably.
Yeah.
So the thing that's nice about Arizona is they threw in a handful of threes on Saturday, and they can make those shots, but that's not what they do. Like, they're not BYU from the outside. They're not, this 3-point menace that can really take advantage of a weakness of KU's, which is guarding the arc. So that helps, and that's how they're surely going to look at this thing. Like we and have been since the bracket was finalized. Like, this is a pretty good road for us. Let's go take advantage of it. So, again, I think it's all about energy. It has been with this team all year. I think they have to show up with that mindset of last night wasn't good enough, beginning, middle, or end. We got to be better than that, and if we aren't, we'll lose. And I think they know that, and I think they will show up with that kind of mindset. And I think it has a chance to be a really kind of classic game. I mean, it is a really, really good quarterfinal matchup in a conference tournament. And honestly, everything but Colorado-Houston, Iowa State, BYU, and Texas Tech, Baylor, those are monster games for the round of 8 in the Big 12 tournament. I mean, really, really cool stuff. And one thing, too, I know you said last thing, but I want to point out, in case you didn't see it on the broadcast or in case people didn't notice it if they were there or whatever, that defensive possession you're talking about with KJ Adams, number one, it reminded me 100% of that possession he had against Miami in the Elite Eight right before halftime. Cam McGusty, nobody could guard him on KU's team. Miami's beating KU in the Elite Eight at halftime. He had 20 points in the first half, I think. And Miami has the ball looking to go up more, and Self puts a freshman named KJ Adams in on the floor and says, go lock him down. And he did that, and then KU blew the doors off of him in the second half. It reminded me exactly of that possession because KJ's always had that in his game. But the coolest thing about it, the broadcast part that I was talking about, is that defensive possession started on the other side of half court. KJ knew that Keyshawn Hall was going to get the ball. Keyshawn Hall knew he was going to get the ball. KJ's clapping as he's running back on defense. Keyshawn smiling, looking at him. I mean, that was like a title fight at Madison Square Garden set up, with the intros walking in and the music. It was so cool to see that. And then, sure enough, the ball went to him, and it was mano y mano, and KJ stood up to the challenge. It was a great, like you said, man, you nailed it. I hadn't heard that line. I like it, though, teach tape, because that's how you defend. And why? He's athletic, he's quick, he's smart, all those things. But the biggest factor in that possession for KJ Adams, freaking pride.
Yep.
He just said, "You're not getting by me," and so cool to watch.
Yeah.
So it was awesome to see it in the arena and see it develop like that. And I did just put it into words, and maybe it sounds better coming out of my mouth, but I might try to write it too, because it was poetry. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
I'm glad to see. That's why we have you on, because I didn't see that first part of where it started there from the in the backcourt to then ultimately getting into the front court, and that
so cool.
entire possession. That's awesome. Matt Tate, R1S1. Matt, appreciate the time, brother. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see what happens tonight with KU, if they can knock off the Wildcats and move on to face off against Texas Tech or Baylor, or if we're talking about what happens on Sunday and where they're heading and which seed. Matt, you're the man. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and enjoy the game.
Yeah, man, we'll do. You too as well. There is Matt Tate, R1S1, and enjoying the game at T-Mobile right now. Iowa State and BYU fans, maybe BYU fans a little bit more, 92-88, 50 seconds to go in that game. a barn burner between the Cougs and the Clones. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling more zone right after this. out of the ACC. We don't have an update yet on Cooper Flagg, who injured his ankle pretty seriously earlier today, unable to put weight on it, got a wheelchair ride to the x-ray room. Haven't heard anything from that. Did go back on to the into the arena to sit on the bench with his teammates, but he was walking very, very slowly, very gingerly, and so we'll see what the update is with that. He's not going to play. I can't imagine he would play again this weekend. I would wonder, too, if he plays next Thursday or Friday. It's a 16 seed for Duke. In theory, you shouldn't need Cooper Flagg, although we've seen 2 different 16 seeds win now. So in theory, shouldn't need that. Maybe even round of 32. I don't know, depending on how bad that thing is. Update out of the T-Mobile Center, and that is BYU is leading Iowa State 94-90 right now with 8 seconds to go. And the official, it probably would not have mattered. BYU was up 93-88. So it probably would not have mattered, but Iowa State threw the ball out of bounds on the side. So BYU had an inbound, and the BYU player slides 3 steps to his left to then throw the ball in bounds. It's like everybody's jumping up and yelling traveling, and the official, all they did was wait for the ball to be inbound and then call the foul on Iowa State. That's obviously trying to foul on purpose. But, hey, dude, you know your job is not to just wait for the foul that's called. Like, you've got a job to do before that. Can't take 3 steps to his left to inbound the ball. It was a clear, obvious travel. Like, he just, as if it was an inbound underneath after a made basket, that he's just going to work the baseline. Just slid to his, even the people in the front row behind him that were Iowa State fans are jumping up and doing a traveling sign. Like, false start, damn it. Illegal formation. Like, again, it probably wouldn't have mattered. It's 93, 93-88, and then BYU hit one of the free throws to make it 94-88. Then Iowa State came down, hit a bucket to be behind 94-90. And now it's 96-92 with 0.7 seconds left. So that game is going to go to BYU. A happy Andy Reid. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with a happy Andy Reid, who was in attendance watching the BYU Cougars knock off TJ Otzelberger's Iowa State Cyclones without Lipsy. But, hey, it's postseason. You play with who you've got, and you play against who is out there. And so BYU will head to tomorrow night's game at 6 o'clock to take on the winner of Colorado. And Houston, will see if that upstart, pesky Colorado 16 seed can keep their Cinderella run going. Can they win 5 games and steal a bid from somebody? They are only 3 wins away against Houston, BYU, and then either KU, Arizona, Texas Tech, or Baylor. If they just win those games, they will be heading to the NCAA tournament. Can you feel how close they are? They're on the cusp.
If they make it to the championship, does Dion sit courtside? I would say yes.
That's a great question. He should be there today.
Yeah,
Come
probably.
on, man.
I would think it'd be a good game to go to today, but also you might lose by 20.
You know, if the Chiefs were in the market for a quarterback and had like a top 10 pick or top 5 pick, it'd be a perfect weekend to have a Shedeur Sanders
QB visit, yeah.
Just be there. You got Andy Reid there watching the BYU Iowa State game, Shedeur and Prime watching the Colorado Houston game right after that. Maybe they're sitting together, maybe they're not. I don't know. Who knows what happens with that? But while we talk about Jalen Moore and Nick Bolton and Elijah Mitchell and who the heck is going to be a defensive tackle and Christian Fulton, you know what we're not worried about? Waiting around all day for Aaron Rodgers to make his decision because we don't know if we'll have a quarterback or not. And that's a good spot to be in. It's a nice place to be in. We're not breaking down tape wondering if Cam Ward or Shedeur or Bo Nix or Tyler Shuck is going to be, not Bo Nix, but Jackson Dart. Sorry, have you ever seen Bo Nix and Jackson Dart in the same place at the same time? You never have. They're the same person. They've just been cloned like Iowa State's fans. Clones.
And Jim Rome fans.
That's exactly right. What's up, clones? Great. Dear Rome, I've been cloned by him. Signed, Jackson Dart. What a great email. Great email. Rackham.
Phenomenal.
Great. Tyler Shuck, quarterback's like, we're not talking about that. We're worried about who are they going to have at defensive tackle, wide receiver. Certainly the left side of the offensive line matters. Certainly it does. But, we're not wondering if Aaron Rodgers is going to make his freaking decision today. They thought maybe yesterday.
He ain't.
How long can he drag this out?
That's what I see. Yeah. How can he how can he drag it out forever if he makes the decision now?
Yep. There was a thought that he was going to make the decision
Guy
yesterday.
never gets a picture taken of him if he doesn't want it, but we got
God.
a beach with the with the blanket over. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah, he just
And I like it. I don't, agree with everything, but he is a good football player, and I can respect that he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, but my goodness, dude, just for once, maybe.
Like, do you really not know where you're going at this point? Are you going to stay in New York? Or are you going to stay in New York but with the other team, or are you going to go to Pittsburgh? Like,
I don't know if the waves were hitting correctly enough last night, so he may not know yet.
Who knows? Yeah.
I mean, Steeler fans, they are not they don't really – there's like a 50-50 split because Pittsburgh, as you know, is like a blue-collar 70s team, no nonsense.
Steelworkers, baby.
Yes, like this is the anti. And they've already gone through all this crap with receivers year after year.
Oh, man, yeah.
Imagine if your quarterback's doing this crap.
I mean, if you're the Giants, you just simply go, all right, we're going to go – we're gonna sign Russell Wilson. Like, I don't know what the other options are.
I mean, the Steelers signed Mason Rudolph today. And to be honest, that's – I don't want to say that it's not that far off from Rodgers because it is, but at the same time, as far as baggage and other things off the field goes, I mean, what are you willing to deal with?
I mean, are you going to –
would you rather have a top pick and Mason Rudolph or deal with all the Rodgers drama?
I mean,
I'd probably still have a top pick.
I'd rather just suck for a year, not make the playoffs, and
Rip
hope
the Band-Aid off.
hope there's a quarterback there next year that you can just simply have.
I think last name Manning might be there.
Could be. It's an arch or two that they got the golden arches. We got the golden arcs.
Big Mick.
The Big Mick.
Big Mac.
Big Mac. We'll take a timeout. They got Peyton and Eli. We got Arch. We'll take a timeout. More Zone next. in the quarterfinals. BYU moving on to the semifinals to face off against the winner of Colorado and Houston. Baylor, Texas Tech tonight at 6 o'clock, and then Kansas, Arizona. Our coverage 7 o'clock right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Tip-off at 8:30. And the Big 12 tournament, Fan Fest Miller Lite, presented by the CW Farm and Ranch Venue, River Bluff Brewery, and Church of the Resurrection. Some NFL updates as we head to the end of today's show. Diana Rossini says that teams are willing to pay Trey Hendrickson the contract that he desires. But Cincinnati's current asking price for the trade is, as one GM said, ridiculous. That also follows up a report from yesterday that teams are willing to pay T. Higgins, would be willing to pay T. Higgins. They have inquired about him, but they have been told that the answer was a first and for T. Higgins. Started with a first and. And before they got to the end of the and, the GM, I'm guessing, hung up the phone.
Well, he's got to go sell the flat screens in the stadium so that they can maybe get closer.
What did DK get? He didn't get a first and. What are you thinking for T. Higgins? Probably a first and. Hello? What guys, check our phone. Our phone line went out. There's something wrong with our phone line right now. And Jordan Schultz talking about Cooper Kupp saying he will not wait long. He doesn't plan on having a drawn-out process, wants to make the decision quickly. So we'll see where he goes. We're going to Soren Petro next.